in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise the hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order in which they were raised at the appropriate time of the meeting. I'm Dawn Holgate, Chair of the Nantucket Select Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Starting with Select Board members in the order in which I see you. Melissa Murphy.
Here.
Christy Parentella.
Here.
Matt Fee.
Here.
Jason Bridges.
Here.
Thank you. Town staff members in the order in which I see you. Libby Gibson.
Present.
Erica Mooney.
Here.
Brian Turbot.
Present.
Roberto Santamaria.
Present.
Holly Backus.
Present.
Vincent Murphy.
Present.
Jericho Melee.
Present.
David Gray.
Present.
Thanks, David. You look like you're out on the job. Rod
I am going to be
McNeil.
broadcasting from the job site.
Excellent. Rod McNeil.
Present.
And then we also have John Giorgio here with us tonight.
Present.
Jennifer Lackmere.
Good evening.
Kate Edwards.
Present.
Mary Bergman.
Present.
Thank you very much. The open meeting of the Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment, as was noted at the beginning, through the Zoom webinar functions. This meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to share the screen of your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recordings. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. I will go through and introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, people can raise their hands for questions or comments. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair and take care to identify yourself. And finally, each vote will be taken via roll call. With that, I will turn to the agenda. I don't believe that there are any real changes. We do, under our COVID-19 weekly update, also have Roberto Santamaria and I believe Gary Shaw will be joining us this evening. But other than that, we can move on to announcements. I'll turn it over to the town manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, we have an announcement about a textile reuse and recycling collection drop off this weekend, and the DPW director is going to elaborate a little bit.
Thank you, Libby, and thank you, Madam Chair. Continuing our collection at the Take It or Leave It, this third Sunday of the month, the regular business hours of the facility will be collecting and hopefully completing the first full truck after the last two events. We're near full, and we're doing that this Sunday again. I also wanted to remind people that the litter derby is going on this weekend, so please participate in that and help rid the island of all the litter out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. David Gray is going to give our announcement about the sewer project that's underway. This is probably going to be a weekly announcement, and he'll give a bit of an update, I think, David, as to the progress of the project so far.
Thank you, Libby. Yeah, I'm actually up on site right now of the project. They're moving along very nicely. They've been gaining about 50 to 60 feet a night right now. They've been able to set one of the big manholes. You see behind me there, just at some of the work going on. They started tonight at 4 o'clock and they've been going every night till 2. And up till now, we haven't had any real complaints for noise. So it's going along very well.
Fantastic, David. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving us a little kind of a look around at it. Thank you. Madam Chair, there are 2 other quick announcements that didn't make it onto the agenda because they came in a little bit late. Per action of the board at your meeting last week, April 7th, the following streets will be closed to allow for outdoor dining beginning on April 21st, Cambridge Street, North Union, and Oak. And the following will have parking closures, South Water and India. And there may be a little bit more that I think Christy may update on and the Economic Task Force update a little bit later. And we forgot to note on the agenda, there will be no board meeting next week. And that's it for announcements.
Thank you very much. Let's move to our COVID-19 weekly update. Are there any opening public comments or board comments? Catherine Slattery.
Hello, Dawn, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, thank you very much. I had sent a request to the select board last Friday and have not received a response from anyone, although in the past half hour I received a response from Libby regarding the board taking some action in relation to an olfactory screening tool. I'm disappointed that I didn't hear from anyone, and I also have Derek Tumray on this meeting to speak about this topic. In light of what's going on with the various variants that are here and numerous businesses that have had to close because of inability to staff their businesses, I don't think that we're out of the woods regarding COVID. And I think that us taking more proactive actions as a town entity is integral for us to fight this and also help other places in the world fight this. So I really am imploring you to take some action. I would also like to be very clear about a statement that there has been numerous pieces of misinformation discussed through various sources that there is no approval to use these tools, and that is completely incorrect. And if we could have clarification by the Yale professors who have invented this tool, that would be appreciated as well. So my ask to you is that this select board approve this town going forward with exploring this as an option to stop the spread of COVID.
Thank you, Catherine. I think that we will be touching on this evening. In regard to getting back to you, we set our agendas and have our agenda meetings on Wednesdays. So this was our first opportunity to sit down and discuss the request. It was not something that falls under an emergency category, but we are interested in talking about it. And I believe that the board has already approved the use of testing this type of test. But regardless, I think that Roberto and Gary can elaborate a little bit more. With that, I will turn it over to Roberto Santamaria.
I think there's also a hand up though.
Oh, excuse me. Derek Tumray?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. So I just would like to follow up what Catherine had mentioned. And if I can have a chance to speak out about this would be terrific. I would sort of just bring to your attention that this olfactory test, there is interest in another island as well. And really there could be an impact on this in a world setting. We really would like to be able to employ this in Brazil. And really, we have this ready. This would be done as a clinical study. It would be available to people on the island. And if I can have an opportunity at some point to present this and get your feedback as interest of the island moving ahead with this, this would be terrific.
Libby?
I just would point out that really this is something that should go through the Board of Health before it comes to the Select Board.
It did come to the Board of Health.
We were talking about it before.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, just, I want to apologize, Catherine, for not getting back to you. I didn't see the email, or it's buried. I'm sorry. I usually try to get back. And, you know, I think the appropriate, I hope that the Board of Health will look at this. I agree that we are, you know, we are in a situation that anything that might help us should be used to get us through the next few months. So hopefully, you know, we'll talk, and I'm sure Roberto and Gary will talk about it later today. If people are standing ready to do it, you know, hopefully we will take advantage of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I will turn it over to Roberto Santamaria.
Thank you. So I do want to clarify that we did put this on the Board of Health agenda, and both Catherine and Dr. Tumray were presented it to the board. And unfortunately, we're not allowed to endorse a specific product. But if I'm not mistaken, this is already commercially available. People are able to use it as a, no, Gary? Right, okay, that's why I was, okay, never mind. Okay, so never mind. But yeah, we weren't able to just endorse something directly. That's why, but it's something that we wouldn't mind seeing. And I know that MGB Boston had something that they were working on too, which I don't think is also available yet. Gary, I think you can handle that one. The MGB.
No, I'm certainly happy to speak to it. Derek and I and Malcolm have had several conversations about it. You know, the bottom line is if a product isn't commercially available, I would expect it would be available to any community that wants to use it. It would be out there nationally, and for whatever the product was designed for, you know, people could purchase it. In speaking to Derek, these are proposed research opportunities where to have a IRB, Institutional Review Board, put together and approve a protocol for using olfactory tests is where Derek is at, is my understanding. We had a conversation yesterday about it, and very happy to continue conversations around how we could participate. So we left the conversation yesterday with that he was going to go back to his other island entities and his IRB to have some more discussions around it. So as I currently understand it, there's not an EUA for an olfactory test, a sniff test that's approved. If they become approved, then they'll hit the shelves and be commercially available. At least that's my understanding of it today.
All right. And with that, I will share my screen and do a quick presentation on the things. Yep, wrong screen again. Okay, so real quick, as of this morning, we've done over 30,000 tests. About 1,453 are positive. If you remember last week's 7-day positivity was 8.7%. So we're down 2%, which is good to see, but we're still not out of the woods. What I wanted to also show here in our incidence rate, our cumulative incidence, is that starting in September, so we actually had a wave 1, a separate wave 2, and wave 3 here, which were a little bit slower than the rest of the country. So what we're seeing across the country at this wave 3, for us, it started in March, early March. But what we started seeing was this same wave 3 in the rest of the country about a week or two earlier than that. So it's really interesting that it's a nice visualization of where we were, where we are. I just wanted to use that in today's metric. We have not received this week's sewage report, but it is also important to show. where we are. Should still be expecting around 20 cases or so according to the sewage. So we have to keep an eye on that. As far as the population goes, there is a lot of conversation that you've been hearing, that you've probably been hearing about, that we are in the red. And yes, the Nantucket is considered a red community right now, along with many of the communities on the Cape and some of the communities on Martha's Vineyard. A lot of this has to do with our population estimates starting to go up, whereas they're still calculating our per 100,000 incidence rate on our census number, which is only about 11,000 people. So that is just one of the things that's really important to pay attention. That's why in the summer, the Cape and Islands end up, the HMCC Region 5 tend to be considered red more than the rest of the state. If you look at our numbers, the Cape and Islands are considered some of the highest infection rates in the state, even though from a purely numbers standpoint, it's actually a lot lower than where Boston and Worcester and things like those cities are. So it's important to see that. But what I really wanted to connect on today was a discussion on variance. It's in today's, actually serendipitously today on WBUR, you'll see in the top right corner, there's a strong discussion happening right now across the country about the evolution of this virus. The virus is mutating a lot faster than we are expecting. There are 3 variants of concern right now that we're keeping an eye on, but the list goes on. These just happen to be the variants that we know about, that we're paying attention to. But if you just look up the B1351 variant, for example, or the B117 variant, you will get a series of journal articles discussing how there are close to 50 variants out there. Just most of them aren't variants of concern. These are the 3 main of concern in the United States. You've heard, of the UK variant, the South African variant, the Brazilian variant. We refer to them as B117, which is the UK one. That's the one that is more transmissible than the original COVID that we're seeing, but it is now the predominant COVID-19 infection in Massachusetts. And we are detecting all 3 B117 subtypes in the sewage. And then the B1351, which is the South African variant, that's the biggest one of concern that everyone's watching. It is in the United States, and there is known cases out here in New England. So we're keeping an eye on it. We are currently investigating to see if there's a presence here. We have not heard back from the laboratories yet to connect on what's been going on social media and things like that. We have not heard back from the lab as to whether or not this variant is here, but we are still keeping an eye on it. And then the P1 variant, which now there's also a P2 variant out there. So it's really important to keep an eye out, and the nomenclature is a little bit difficult. The Brazilian variant is the one that's been spreading in Barnstable County right now. So it'll only be a matter of time before all 3 of these variants are here. We just need to monitor and keep an eye. So it's really important. It's really important to maintain the social distancing, the masks. I know there's a lot of confusion between whether or not why in schools you can do 3 feet of separation, whereas everywhere else it has to be 6 feet of separation. And the argument behind that is that in a school it's considered a controlled environment. So you can, with distancing, with the masking, with hand washing, without sharing between desks and things like that, it can be a little bit more controlled. So that's one of the primary reasons. And then also, there hasn't been much significant spread in most of the schools across the country. Not to say that there hasn't been spread, but it hasn't been, major outbreaks. And then back to the vaccines, we are closing out phase 2 this week. On Saturday at 10 a.m. You can sign up. The new appointments open up for next week. Don't forget that phase 3 opens on April 19th, which is Monday, Patriots Day. So that will be the beginning of phase 3, which is open availability from everyone 16 and older. And then as of this last Monday, we've given over 10,000 doses. So huge thank you to the VFW and for all the people working at the clinic, the hospital. It's been a huge undertaking. So we should be really proud about what Nantucket has been able to pull off. And with that, I will stop sharing and give it over to Gary.
Thanks, Roberto. And it is a pretty nice outcome through the VFW and the vaccine clinic. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware what's happening with the cadence of vaccine. I've learned that that word is what the state has used since the start of distribution of vaccine through requests. You get set on a particular cadence. Our cadence on Nantucket has been established by the state of, for Pfizer, 1,170 doses per week. And we've been at that number for probably a little over a month. But we learned through an occurrence last week that what occurs with 1170 is that is intended, now we learn, to be first and second doses. So when you start out with 1170 new vaccinations, and then you do the next week 1170, at the third week, you're starting to look at giving second doses. So that eats the supply. Well, what occurred is that the state had advanced us a Pfizer shipment of 1,170 to make sure that the commitments for second doses were made. So that meant that in 1 week, last week, we weren't able to give large numbers of new appointments or any. We were doing second doses. So when you think of it, that dramatically slows down how fast we can give vaccines. In advocating for this, I know that the town has penned some communication to our representative and senator, congressman. We at the Mass General have advocated through Ann Prestipino, our CEO for the system, all the way to Secretary Sutters, and there was a meeting with the chief of staff to talk about what's the slowdown in the vaccine, or can we get more vaccine? What we were told is that the president has allocated larger shipments of vaccinations to go to FEMA sites that are being set up, and also a federal partnership, CVS partnership. And that's taking away from states' distribution numbers. So we're being held at a cadence of 1,170, even though all of the new categories for eligibility have opened. We've made it abundantly known through our representatives and through the hospital and our system that that we are not getting to where we need to be quickly enough with an influx of people coming here. And there was great sympathy, but we were simply told there's not more vaccine to give right now. And then with the Pfizer issue, I'm sorry, the J&J issue that occurred, that's slowed things down even farther. So 1,170 is a good number, but it is a blend, and we're waiting to see, if the manufacturers can ramp up more. Point to note is we have never received J&J on the island, so no J&J has been given out. So that's where we sit with vaccine. My role is to advocate, obviously. I think I've made everyone that I can think of aware that we would like to move into doing 4,000 or 5,000 doses, but it's just simply not available. So thoughts or questions, I'm certainly open.
Christy?
Thank you. And thank you, Gary, for advocating for us. Hearing that a lot of vaccines are going to CVS's, I'm wondering if it's possible for any of the pharmacies on Nantucket to distribute the vaccine, and has there been any conversations around that?
There has, but to date, there's not vaccines going to those sites that we know of. And those would be individual requests, not something coordinated through the Cottage Hospital. So they would need to sign up if that's a possibility and request their allocation, have the staff to distribute it, have the staff to follow up on second doses. So it's not a simple undertaking. And I don't believe that every pharmacy is attempting to get into that environment. It would be nice if there were more options. There just aren't right now on this island.
Matt?
Yeah, it is just so discouraging. I know you guys are too, to hear this. This was all, we all knew this because it was going to happen 2 months ago. And we were all concerned then. It's going the way we thought it would go. It's just, it is just so disappointing to hear this and to think that we've got a at-risk population and we're ramping up and we're, all the things that we've talked about, and there's no response. Just because we don't have a CVS or a Walgreens, we're not going to be able to vaccinate enough people quickly enough. I'm really just disappointed. I'm just disappointed in the legislature. I'm disappointed in the state. I'm just disappointed that we're left in this situation.
Yeah, Matt, one of the grassroots needs for advocation is on what's the census here. When you look at the state's report for vaccine distribution by county, it shows that we're at 104%. We're actually in the highest level of vaccine distribution, according to numbers they're using in a previous population study, which is, I believe, very inaccurate. So if you see that, and then you look at needs across the state, even knowing that we're expanding, it doesn't give a compelling story. And I don't have an argument to come back and say, no, the number's really 25,000 because our sewer gallons, the sewage gallons that go through show that we've got that much usage. It doesn't bear water. And Roberto, feel free to jump in here. I think we've been going at this all the angles we can think of to get a sense of urgency that, look, we're going to jump our population in the next 2 months 400%. And folks may or may not be vaccinated when they get here. So that's one piece. Second piece, though, that I think we all need to keep in mind is that, having the vaccine is a medical marvel. And we were able to get all of our seniors, those at highest risk, first responders, a lot of our community workers, the school teachers, they're vaccinated if they wanted to be. And that's really good because it will obviously help us move through the summer with less issues. But I don't have any other arrows in the quiver to put up into Boston to let folks know that or to change the direction. It was disappointing to hear that the president is moving to FEMA sites and a stronger CVS partnership, and we don't have either here. We do have a site, the state knows about it, but the vaccine is not going to increase in the near future.
Yeah, the Johnson & Johnson one really, really hurt. That dropped allocations in New England states. What I heard in Massachusetts, the number I got from one of our state calls was that Massachusetts allocation dropped by 86% because of that Johnson & Johnson mess up in Baltimore. I believe you may have already received the letter that I sent to Dylan Fernandez and Julian Sears' office, where I highlight the importance of how our population is about to triple. And they're advocating on our behalf as well. So I guess it's really a waiting game at this point. If it wasn't for the Johnson & Johnson mess up, which is what was primarily supposed to go to these other sites, which frees up our cadence, we'd be in a different conversation right now.
Catherine Slattery's had her hand up, and then I'll go to you, Melissa. Catherine?
Sorry, she put her hand down and moved.
Oh, she put her hand down. Okay, Melissa?
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to echo Matt's statements that this is all very disappointing and frustrating news, particularly as we're having more and more people arriving on island, both for employment and our seasonal visitors. So I guess I'm a little bit curious if a similar letter would, are there conversations that are happening, Roberto, through your office with our pharmacists to encourage them or ask them if we can, implore them to start vaccinating people and to put those requests in? Is that an avenue that we can persist on?
We have a pharmacist that's already registered in the MIIS system and looking to do it. It's just he hasn't been given the option to order any yet.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's stuck in a holding pattern.
I'm sorry?
we're sort of stuck in a bit of a holding pattern then.
Yeah. So we have a pharmacist who's already registered in the MIS and who's willing to give doses. And then Jericho, was it Monday that we received a request that somebody information that another clinic on island has also registered in the MIS system and is willing to give doses too, but they just haven't been able to receive any yet either.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
it's a bit of a knock-on effect from the Johnson & Johnson supply decreasing. That really disrupted everybody's distribution plans.
Okay. So, and I suppose we can talk more about this tomorrow at the Board of Health meeting, and just asking again, given, we were on a trajectory, I think, of hoping to have vaccination at a certain pace and mitigation efforts and hoping to slow this surge that we're experiencing down. And we seem to be looking at perhaps a step backwards. Are there other public policy things that we should be considering or putting in place to be more proactive and protective in this, vulnerable time? But I'm happy to talk more about that tomorrow at the Board of Health meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Catherine Slattery, and then I'll go to you, Matt.
I want to echo Melissa and Matt's concerns, as many people here are vaccinated, but many of our employees are not vaccinated, our employees that are arriving on island. And another dysfunction related to that is CVS may be able to not only vaccinate, but they're also everywhere else in the nation, you can get a rapid antigen test, and we have not had that available. And I would like Gary to comment on that.
That would be a Dr. Pearl question about an antigen test. There are a number of things out on the market. We do the PCR test, which is, obviously looking for the virus versus an antigen. But I can take that to Dr. Pearl to get an understanding of what's evolved. We just haven't had that presented to us through our system.
Quick note on that, the Binax Now rapid antigen test is available over the counter now. You can order it as an at-home kit.
Thank you. And Jericho, was that your comment as well?
There are also a few sites on the island that do rapid antigen testing. I believe there's a pharmacy as well as healthcare providers do them in-house as well.
Great. Matt?
Yeah, my comment's quick. Yeah, it was just to thank Melissa. I was thinking the same thing. What else do we need to do? Do we need to screen or take other measures if this is the situation? And, I think that's, that would be great for you guys to explore that tomorrow. Thank you.
Christine?
Thank you. Just a question for Gary, and having this delayed rollout or not being able to speed up as we thought we would, how is this affecting people who have already received their first dose? Are we prioritizing the second doses over the first?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was some misinformation that somehow got out into the press about us canceling second appointments, and we've never done that. I think that's been corrected now out in the media. But we only open up slots for those doses that the state guarantees we will receive. So to date, if you've received a first, you have a second date that you've been given to be able to get that. You also have an option if something occurs in your life and you need to change that date. As you get closer to it, we give out an email address and a QR card now where you can get a hold of us to change a date. But we will make sure that vaccine's available, with that kind of communication. So far, that's been pretty smooth.
That's good. And just a second follow-up, I'm not sure if this is for Roberto or Gary, but I know that we did a lot of advocating at the local level. And is it worth it sending letters to Congressman Keating or anybody else at the federal level to try to get vaccines to the island?
Well, certainly Roberto and I are advocating with all of our sources through all of those channels. We're making our island's needs known. I wouldn't stand in anybody's way who wants to advocate for the island and have a voice. We have a right to have that voice. But I do know that we have constantly made people aware. So I guess it's an individual decision, Christy.
Thank you. Derek Tumra had his hand up. Did you still want to speak? And then I'll go to Jason. You're next.
You hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, hello.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of bring to the point. I mean, I don't think when I last presented the Board of Health, it was about doing this test. And I want to just say that since then, we were in a competition from the X Prize and it actually won the competition for rapid COVID testing in this other category. So, this can really be done on a massive scale and be used at basically every home on the island. And it would be done in the auspices of a research study. And actually the person who was on the judge for the X Prize is Dr. Michael Mina from Harvard in Massachusetts. And so he sat on the panel and he's been advocating rapid home COVID tests, which actually have been done in Citibank. So what I'd like to just simply say, and bring it to your attention, that it is possible to do these things in a massive way and have a very large impact. And the modeling study that was done, which we've actually received very good news on, and was actually featured in the New York Times, showed that this could have a massive impact on mitigation and drop of transmission. So although I understand the natural focus that should be on, appropriately so, on vaccines, anything that can be used to increase decrease the transmission through other mitigation methods, especially if they would be easy to do, I think would have merit. And really what I would like to know is effectively, is the island of Nantucket interested in a research study on this topic or not? Because I think if so, it could have a large impact both on the citizens of Nantucket, and if so, would serve as such as a model of a public health measure that could be used elsewhere. I mean, we have an MOU to do 5 million tests out in Brazil. So that's sort of where I'm sitting. And I do think that from what I understand here, you are in somewhat of an emergency state to take action. So I'm hoping that one could move quickly to either indicate your interest or non-interest.
I'd like to clear up a couple of things, Derek, if you wouldn't mind. If Dawn, may I go ahead and speak?
Yes, Gary, please.
We're more than happy to consider research, and we've had a number of those discussions with Derek. The fact of the matter is, research has to first have a plan that's been written, approved by an IRB, and agreed to by sites that have the capability to be involved in that level and detail of research. So we're waiting on a plan from Derek. But until then, the cottage hospital isn't just going to simply start receiving sniff tests and handing them out without a plan that's in a research environment that's been agreed to. So it's a bit misleading to come to the select board and suggest that those can just suddenly be done and that people can start getting that information. So we're willing to have those discussions, and I'm just waiting on that plan.
I'm 100%.
Excuse me. Can I just make a suggestion? I think that this is an extremely worthy discussion, and I think that we would wholeheartedly, the board can disagree with me, support this, but I think that the plan needs to be worked out with both the Board of Health and the cottage hospital on how it would function. And I don't even know that it actually needs to come to us for a policy decision. I think we would completely back it. So I think that this is maybe not the best venue to have further discussion on this right now. But I think that that's the short answer, that this board would likely completely support it, but it just needs to be put into place in the correct way. Melissa?
Thank you, Dawn. I was thinking the same thing, and I'm trying to think about. Oh, I'm sorry, Jason. What might expedite that conversation? And Roberto, if tomorrow forming a small work group of Board of Health members and the cottage hospital, so we can roll up our sleeves and figure out exactly what the ask is and what the benefit to the community is. I think that might be a way for us to facilitate the conversation moving forward instead of waiting for a public session.
We already voted on that. It was Malcolm, Gary.
Oh, great.
Dr.
Perfect. Okay.
Great.
I didn't remember voting on anything, but thank you.
Can I go to Jason, who's been waiting?
Oh, that was fine. It was more of questions on what was happening. So that was great. Just just more of get a feel from Gary and Roberto on what is your staff and everybody telling you, what is on the feeling of being vaccinated? Are people feeling kind of superhuman? They don't think they can get COVID. They don't think, is that starting to kind of grow this confidence? Is there more outreach that we can do? Is there more evidence showing that you can still get COVID if you're fully vaccinated, even 4 weeks after the second shot? I just maybe we've already talked about it here a little bit tonight, but I think that's something that I keep hearing around me. Around the.
Roberto and I can certainly answer from different angles, but Jason, I'm not sensing or seeing that people have become cavalier since they've gotten the vaccine. At least I'm not seeing that in a general sense. On the island, as I go around, my wife goes around, and she's a nurse. We're seeing that people appear to be masked, and that's great, and social distancing and those things are still there. The issue is that you've got only 25% of the country vaccinated, and there's a lot of people coming and going from here. So the opportunity to be still around people that have COVID or a variant is really high. So that precipice of how many percentage, what's the percentage of people vaccinated to those that haven't yet, is we've just got to get that up. The emphasis on all of the things that you are supporting and doing, outdoor dining, of course, masking, hand washing, distancing, messaging, doing that through the Interfaith Council and all the other venues, that hasn't slowed down. We're still doing that. But we are seeing across the country, and we've seen on Nantucket, a couple of breakthroughs with individuals that have been vaccinated. And, it's kind of a conundrum. At least we know that two, most likely who were fully vaccinated, didn't develop adequate antibody because they had other health complexities that were preventing that from occurring. And that's known in the research that's out there. In fact, individuals with, transplants and other things weren't in that research as we understand it. But we have had an individual that had a breakthrough after having been previously had COVID. I'm sorry, I can't turn this phone off here. And that's the quandary, is that you're still, at about 90% or so, and can still come down with this illness. So all of the precautions are still really important.
Kind of nailed it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this part? Matt, then Christy.
Yeah, for Roberto, what are our concerns if, the Brazilian or the British variant, if any of those really take hold here, what situation are we in? What are our concerns with those?
Well, so the concerns are that they're much more virulent. The only issue is that, the only difference that ends up between, the South African variant, the Brazilian variant, and these other variants that are coming out, that though they are much more dangerous, we treat them exactly the same way. And now there's the Regeneron treatment that just came out, that was just approved, and then we have ways of treating it. It's just what's important is that we need to slow down the spread while we can get people vaccinated, because those who aren't vaccinated are at higher risk of having more severe illness with these variants. If you are vaccinated, it is still helping to prevent severe illness. That's probably your biggest reason to get the vaccine right now, because even with variants, it's helping. We may be looking into the future of booster shots. That's kind of what this BU article that I mentioned in my slide was talking about, that with the evolution of the virus, more new vaccines come out as the virus mutates, kind of like the flu shot. So we might end up from a policy standpoint, we might end up in a situation where we have to do a seasonal COVID shot as well. But what's really the biggest part right now is just a race against the spread. We can make the policies to shut down and do things like that again, but the only people we're going to end up harming is in the long term of the loss of businesses. businesses took way too much of a hit this last year, that if we do lockdowns or shutdowns again, we will put them out of business. And we will create more of a public health crisis than the virus itself. So it is a situation that is very delicate, and what we're relying on is this availability of the vaccine. So we need people to mask, do the whole thing, reiterate over and over and over again the importance of the mitigation standards. And we will have a seasonal COVID person again this summer. As we go along with that, we already have somebody in mind. Sorry. And as we move forward, hopefully it will slow down.
Christy?
Thank you. Just want to put out a very crazy idea, but I feel like we're in a very similar spot that we were in last year, in that we're trying to prepare for the summer and how to keep the community safe. And we as a town were able to put funding forward to increase testing. And I'm just wondering, and sorry to Brian Turbett for suggesting this, but is there anything that we could do to help? Could the town help in funding to get the vaccine to the island, or is that just not an available solution right now?
In getting the vaccine itself on the island, or testing?
The vaccine.
So the vaccine is based on the allocation. That's kind of the bottleneck we're in. It's whatever the state and the federal government is able to give us. But other than that, we have to increase the locations that we'd be able to give it. So hopefully that pharmacy and the clinic that did reach out to us and said that they are willing to give vaccinations, hopefully they should be able to start receiving doses soon as well.
Matt?
Yeah, just my weekly reminder, if you're hiring, ask your employees to get vaccinated before they get here. We are doing that, and that is working for our staff. And a lot of them have been able to get even the Johnson & Johnson earlier. But they're at home and they're in school and they're doing schoolwork, and they can take some time off and get their 2 shots in. It's imperative that we all put that message out, because it's going to be difficult to do that here. And I hope that the Board of Health discusses tomorrow screening and Andy Bezos and some of the ideas that are there. If the vaccines are not possible, then what is prevention? Vaccine, we've got treatment and we've got prevention. Let's look at some of that if we and hope we don't need it, but let's put it in place just in case we do.
Thanks, Matt. Scott McElhern?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear? Okay. Just trying to think outside of the box here a little bit. Are the pharmacies in Hyannis does anybody know? CVS, pardon?
You broke up. I couldn't hear what
you broke up. Were you asking if they're doing vaccines in Hyannis at the CVS?
Yes. CVS and Rite Aid. Are they doing anything in Hyannis? Just trying to think outside of the box, if there's some way that we could promote a partnership with them and with the Steamship Authority, even providing free transportation for people to go off the island to get it there. I'm also going to reach out to my daughter, who's the site director of a clinic in Virginia that's doing 7,000 shots a day. I don't know if there's any possibilities of shifting any distribution from other states to other ones, but it's imperative that we get everybody vaccinated on on that island before the season hits as possible. I've been vaccinated. I've had both mine. My wife has. We have other friends that come with us. We are seasonal people for 30 years, but I'm on this call today because I care about Nantucket in the deepest way.
Thank you, Scott. I believe John Giorgio had his hand up. He lives on the Cape.
Just anecdotally, I received my vaccine at the CVS in South Yarmouth. You just go to the CVS website and sign up if they have doses available.
Thank you, John. I did take a look at that recently, and there just weren't appointments available. But I'm sure that they will have more, and maybe they'll have a wider distribution. Some people were traveling to Nantucket to get the vaccine because it was easier to get an appointment here. And maybe that will shift where some people will travel from Nantucket over to the Cape to get their vaccine. Jason?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, Matt, your comment, I don't know legally if you can require 100% someone to get vaccinated. I just want to make sure select board is not saying that. Different industries, like municipalities might not be able to, but you may. I just want to be careful with saying that you can require people before they work. Maybe you can, but I'm legally, what I've gotten in the nonprofit world is you cannot, or you need to be careful if you do it.
And Jason, I didn't use the word require. I'm strongly suggesting that they get it, and most of them are. They're still undergoing a 5-day quarantine and then a test before we let them into the pool. And we're telling them that, you know what, you can't hang around with all the kids that you're coming to the island to hang around with if you haven't been vaccinated. So there's a real incentive, because these guys are, they're ready to come out here. It's going to be wild out here this summer, and the young people are ready to come out here. They think they're invincible, and they're going to want to, they're going to do what they're going to do. And last year we were fortunate that it was not, these variants weren't here. The infection really wasn't here. It laid down, maybe we'll end up there this year, fingers crossed. But if it doesn't, we could have a different outcome this summer. So, I'm really trying to encourage them without requiring them to arrive here vaccinated. CDC guidelines are that if you're vaccinated, you can be in a room with other vaccinated people. That's a huge incentive for young people to go get their vaccines, please. And the other point, businesses have been closed. Our businesses have opened on island, and they were open a day or two and they're closed again. That's going to hurt the businesses more, more than if we found a way to screen. If we found a way to screen and make sure that people were if we found a way to do that, that's going to be better for businesses, I believe, than closing for 5 days, 2 or 3 times this summer. It's hard to plan for that. It's hard to operate under those constraints. And, and if the Board of Health is forced, in July to say, no indoor dining, that would be catastrophic. No bars, no indoor dining. It would be catastrophic. And I'm not saying we're planning on doing that, but we don't know what's going to happen. None of us can predict what's going to happen. So what can we put in place to lower the risk as much as we can? What is reasonable? And I hope that the Board of Health does that, put some brain power to that tomorrow.
Thank you, Matt. Melissa, and then I was hoping to go on to the Economic Task Force.
Yeah, thank you, John. I was just going to say that perhaps in tandem, a conversation can be happening with the task force about recommendations to businesses, just like what Matt was talking about. Also, what kind of tools are available to them on the private market for their own screening measures. So rather than it needing to come from a public policy perspective, what are some independent responsible actions that businesses can take? And if the task force can work with Jericho and Roberto on what those recommendations would be, I think we can get a strong message out about what some of those recommendations and tools available are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. With that suggestion, I will turn it over to Christy for an Economic Task Force update.
Thank you. So as was mentioned earlier, outdoor dining is going to be starting next week. So the road closures are going to start. The town is using a grant from Department of Transportation to help with decking. It's not paying for all of the decking, but it's at least helping some of those businesses have a flat surface on Main Street and other streets with cobblestones. So we're really excited for that to get started this season. We're also working on ways to help support nonprofits. It's part of our mission is to help businesses and nonprofits have a successful year. And so we've been doing outreach to nonprofits to see kind of what are their needs and ways that we could help support them. And we've been brainstorming some family-friendly activities to try to bring families downtown in a safe way, whether it be events at Children's Beach or other kind of theater and arts and culture type programs to get families to have a safe and successful summer. And we are still going through the chamber and Remain are still going through the Rock Solid grant applications. So they received, I think, over 40 applications from businesses, and they should have the winners announced in the next week or two. So we're really excited for that to roll out and really happy with the partnership with the town to provide those funds to businesses. And the last thing is we do have a QR code that restaurants and retail will be able to have on display that will go to the town website to provide updates. So it'll remind people of the orders that we have, how to get tested, how to make sure you're wearing your mask, things that are going to keep our community safe. And that will be on display everywhere so that visitors can find out all the information they need.
Melissa?
Thank you, Dawn. Christy, was there continued conversation about, I know the communication I just mentioned about businesses, but I think Janet had mentioned maybe last week some communication specifically to businesses about sending that, that link of the website out to people, how to best bring your employees to the island and what some of those recommendations are. Is that still in progress?
Yeah, so we were chatting today about another outreach email to businesses. We are waiting to hear on a grant from the state that we applied for that is a partnership with Martha's Vineyard and their chamber. And we thought that once we get word, if we got that grant, that would be a good time to reach out about new grant opportunities and some updates for the businesses. Obviously, if we don't hear back soon, we'll send that communication shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any other COVID-19 updates, comments, thoughts this evening? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Next, I will move on to public comment for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion, non-COVID-19 related. If there's anyone here tonight to make a public comment? I'm seeing no hands. There's no new business. Approval of minutes and treasury warrants. Matt?
Yeah, I just had I had a change on one of my comments from the 4/5/21 meeting, joint meeting that I shared with Erica. I'll read it real quick. Mr. Fee commented, electricity to operate pools is increasing faster than solar and all other alternatives, and continuing on this path will require a third cable paid by ratepayers sooner than projected. And that's because that was, if that's acceptable, then I'm good to make a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor by roll call. Christy Garantella?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Matt Fee?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Those carry unanimously. Citizen departmental requests. Rob McNeil is here to go over a few noise bylaw waivers for DPW projects.
Thank you,
Public
Madam Chair.
Works projects.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 3 requests before you this evening. I would say the first being an annual that we've requested in the past for townwide line painting. Our line painting contractor typically does the work at night to do all the pavement markings townwide. We're looking for permission or waiver from the noise bylaw April through June. We're currently in the process of drafting the contract with the chosen contractor and expect to have that before you shortly. I'm not sure if you want to take these individually or I'll just go right through them. Wait Drive. Thank you. Wait Drive construction. Our contract has been awarded. We gave the contractor notice to proceed, and we've conducted our second construction meeting today. We'll be meeting weekly on Wednesdays through the expected duration is probably through the end of the calendar year. And what we're looking for flexibility on is to provide the contractor the ability to do utility connections into the evening hours or overnight to avoid traffic conflicts and congestion during daytime hours. The expected connections for utilities for the Wait Drive project would be at the driveway entrance to 2 fairgrounds, the Plus building out in Old South Road, as well as Amelia Drive. So between those two, we're looking for the flexibility to give the contractor the ability to do night work May through June for those 2 very specific areas. Those durations are expected to be substantially less, but we don't have a firm schedule from them yet, and we don't have a firm commitment from them yet. We're just looking for permission to be able to provide that flexibility to the contractor to limit disruption during daylight hours. Obviously, some very busy times for the island preparing for summer. And lastly, roadway mill and overlay. This is really for fall, but once the sidewalk reconstruction effort is completed, we want to come through and mill and overlay that area. And obviously the inbound and outbound truck route, the primary truck route is Lower Broad and then Easy Street. So we'd like to do that, or at least give the flexibility to the contractor to be able to do those efforts during the night. That's it. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, I think, the lines that we've done in the past, I have no issue with those. I think we should approve those. When we start talking about neighborhoods or, other areas, I'm a little worried about giving a blanket okay that, yeah, you can work at night, anytime this summer. I think that may open us up to a lot of complaints from the neighbors who are, already unhappy Wait Drive is even happening, to downtown people on the truck route. I think that it's not, I think I would be more comfortable if I knew what I was agreeing to before I agreed to it.
Jason?
I think the line painting and the milling on Easy Street and Broad Street are okay. But yeah, I think maybe a little more information on Wait Drive. Is it going all the way through the night? And but A and C, I have no problem with. We've kind of done those in the past. Maybe you have it in. You already know, Rob, exactly how it'll work.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
sure. So we're happy to hold off and provide specific dates if the contractor is interested in pursuing working overnight for those utility connections. We just haven't seen a schedule presented yet. So happy to go in that direction. I just, if they're looking to go right out of the blocks, I guess that the idea was to be able to give them the ability to go. And the utility work for Wait Drive in Amelia and Old South is expected to have a very short duration. we're talking about probably a single evening for each, or potentially a single evening for both. So that's what that's about. The line painting is certainly longer than that. And the mill and overlay downtown on Easy Street and Broad would be very likely a single evening or potentially a second evening.
On the evenings that it will be happening, will there be outreach to let the neighbors know?
Of course.
I did appreciate I got a rolled up notice attached to my door for the sewer project.
Sure.
And I thought that was really, really great. Jason and then Melissa.
Is there a way that we can just move it forward tonight and even says like, all right, for Wade Drive, we'll give you 2 nights. And then if you need 6, then you come back. That way we can just get it through, something like that. So you don't have to come back to select board. How's the board feel about that? Matt, Don? Sorry, Melissa.
Melissa?
I was going to, thank you, Jason. I was going to suggest something similarly. I don't want to not vote on this and hamstring Rob's ability to get the contractor in place and move this forward. And so I'm comfortable approving it, maybe with a little bit more of a generous limit, maybe 5 nights, and knowing what you've said, Rob, that it's unlikely to be that long, but maybe gives you the flexibility you need. And then to have you either report back to us or through Libby on exactly what that plan is and that notices have been sent out. I'd be comfortable with something like that.
Matt?
Yeah, and again, if it's only a handful of nights, that's one thing, and I'm fine with that. But if it's longer, and from the big picture, I look at this, we've got, we're adding more, 200 more cars every year. It's getting crazier and busier. This is where we're heading. And in big cities, this stuff happens all night long in a lot of places. And, so this, this is a result, of what we're doing here and what we are doing as an island. I heard real quick, I heard an interesting number at the crack meeting the other day. We have 50% of our population and dwellings have been added since 1991. That's a frightening number. So are we going to add another 50% in the next 20 years? Who knows? But, and if we do, these are the things that we'll be facing continually. And so anyway.
Jason?
If that was a motion, Melissa, I'll second it. With 5.
That's a motion.
I'll second that.
And that's the second. Okay. All those in favor by roll call?
Don, may I ask though, should I amend that to also include approval for A and C and the modification of B as I described?
Yes.
Okay, so that's my motion.
And your second, Jason? All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Next up, we have the Nantucket Preservation Trust request for preliminary review of historic preservation restrictions to be held by Nantucket Preservation Trust for, I think we will take these separately because Matt will only be voting on the first one. Let's go to Nantucket Island School of Design and the Arts for 23 and 25 Wawinett Road. Mary Bergman.
Hi, everybody. Mary Bergman. So 23 and 25 Wawinett Road is the current site of the Nantucket Island School of Design. It received, they received Community Preservation Act funding for the preservation of the Jerry Barn, Long Shed, and silos. And so this preservation restriction is a requirement of the CPA funding. So, yeah.
Erica?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind the board and let the public know that this is just a preliminary review of these preservation restrictions per your policy, and then we'll send them to town council for review and they'll issue a report and it'll come back to you.
Thank you. Melissa?
Can I make a motion to approve?
Second.
Actually, we don't make.
We don't need a motion to approve these for it to go on.
Or do we? I'm trying.
Yeah, yes, because you're going to make a motion to move them forward.
To move them forward, yeah. Okay. I was trying to remember.
Motion to move this one forward for NISTA.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor by roll call: Matt Fay.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. 79 Orange Street. Matt.
And I'm recused.
Thank you.
Thanks. So 79 Orange Street is a grocery store, or was a grocery store that was run by a well-known Portuguese resident of the island. It's an interesting building because, as you all know, the facade of the building was salvaged from a sister building, the former Monument grocery store at 106 Main Street. So this facade was attached to the earlier structure and saved for future installation. And in 2015 to 2016, the store was rehabilitated, installing the facade from the 106 Main Street on its east elevation. So it's a great example of a preservation success story, and it now stands as a unique survivor from the Victorian streetscape. And I should mention that this is a restriction that the property owner wants to enter into with the Preservation Trust. This is not related to CPA funding.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any questions or a motion to move forward?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call: Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously, 4-0. Next, we have the Nantucket Preservation Trust, a request for a letter of support to nominate Nantucket for the World Monuments Watch List in 2020. Mary?
2022.
Thank you. Time is flying by.
I'm used to saying March 2020.
We do not want to go back in time. So this is something that I've been working with Holly Backus, preservation planner, and other members of the staff, including Lauren Sinatra and Janet Schulte on. And essentially, we're interested in nominating Nantucket. For the Nantucket Preservation Trust would be the nominator. Our hope is that you would support that nomination to be on the World Monuments Watch List 2022. So this is a global program that seeks to discover, spotlight, and take action on behalf of heritage places facing challenges or presenting opportunities of direct relevance to our global society. So every 2 years, they choose 25 places from around the world, and they're looking for sites that have that are threatened in some way, and they look at issues of climate change, which is obviously a huge consideration here on Nantucket, imbalanced tourism, and the need to amplify underrepresented voices in our cultural narratives. This is a really great way, just going through this application process in conversations with folks on the town staff and in the community, of looking at areas in which Nantucket could improve some of our resiliency when it comes to ideas of history and cultural heritage, and what sort of narratives we're promoting. And I think a lot of areas of the town's strategic plan and different goals are encapsulated in these conversations. And it's also a really great way to highlight some of the work that the town has done, because Nantucket really is forward thinking in a lot of different areas, especially coastal resiliency. As everybody who watches these meetings knows, there's a lot of great progress that's going on. So we would be hoping that you might support this nomination. Our thinking is that the more people who see themselves in Nantucket's, the thing that really interests, I think, us about this is the World Monuments Fund there may be money attached, but that's not really a guarantee. But there would be the help from these experts in the areas of cultural history to help us engage more people from more diverse communities on the island to help shape those narratives. And I think the more people who care about Nantucket's history, the more people who will see themselves reflected in it, the more that they will want to protect the island for the future against all these different threats. So thanks for your consideration.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, motions? Matt?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call. Matt Fee?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Jason Bruce?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Good luck with moving that forward. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Select Board.
Thank you. So next up, we do have a public hearing to consider the permanent installation of a stop sign on Coffin Street in Sconset at the intersection of West Sankaty Road to create a three-way stop sign. I will open the public hearing. This was recommended by Traffic Safety, and we agreed to schedule a public hearing for tonight. I am not seeing any hands, but I'll give it a minute. Do you have any thoughts on this? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and can we go to a vote?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Matt Fee?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Next up, we have the town manager's report. I'll turn it over to you, Libby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first item is review status of Baxter Road feasibility assessment. And if the board will recall, you all approved a contract with Arcadis Consulting in February. Stakeholder meetings have been underway. We had a select board workshop yesterday with the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee to get input from you all and that group. And the purpose, and in fact, one of the items we talked about yesterday was what should we name this project? Because to date, we've been calling it sort of interchangeable things, but Baxter Road long-term planning, Baxter Road long-term resiliency, things like that. The purpose of the review with Arcadis is to determine what alternatives exist for Baxter Road in the future, short-term, long-term. So I think we had a really good meeting yesterday, and Jen and Kate, I think, are going to take us through, unless Vince, do you want to say any intro comments? Okay. Thank you.
Am I sharing the presentation or is one of you?
I think Kate's going to share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Super. Thank you. Well, I don't know if you have a lot of extra people, but this is being recorded. So I was going to do some basics in terms of who Arcadis is. We're a consulting engineering firm. We employ engineers, architects, scientists, and planners. And we've been in business in Massachusetts for over 60 years. We've been in business worldwide for over 100 years. Going to our agenda for tonight, we're going to be providing an update on this important project. And that title that you just saw on the last slide, that was the one that we named it. And as Libby mentions, we're looking for a new title that really resonates with the town. So we'll give some introductions on the staff that are working on the project. We'll do an overview, talk about where we are right now and what we heard and where we are going. So our project staff, I am Jennifer Kelly Lockmeyer. I serve as the principal in charge and the contractual officer for Nantucket, and I'm very excited to do so. I personally have over 30 years experience. I am a professional engineer. My specialties are in open channel hydraulics and all sorts of closed pumping systems. Kate Edwards is our project manager, and Kate is a principal engineer. She's been in the business for over 16 years, and Kate and I have worked together for all of those 16 years. And she too is a professional engineer in the state of Massachusetts, and her experiences specifically in stormwater planning, design, and permit compliance, flood studies, and planning for climate change adaptation and most recently has worked with Don Arcadis's work in the city of Boston. Actually, she continues in the city of Boston, and she is a BS in environmental engineering and a professional license. Karen Bolter is serving as one of our primary workers on this assignment, and Dr. Karen Bolter is an urban and coastal resilience expert who has a PhD in geosciences, and that's in geology and geography, and her GIS spatial analysis of people, cities, and the environment inform data-driven client resilience. She has worked as a professor and as a planner in local government, giving her a unique range of perspectives. Dr. Bolter also specializes in quantifying benefits and costs for pre-disaster mitigation and grant application development to support funding infrastructure resilience. Dr. Irene Watts is a senior coastal modeler and has an undergraduate degree in ocean engineering with a minor in geology and a master's in civil engineering and a PhD in ocean engineering. She served as a coastal engineer for the New England District of the Army Corps, and her work included studies on tidal inlets, nearshore morphology, sediment transport throughout New England region, including Cape Cod. Her research is focused on numerical modeling of sediment transport and morphology with a strong field and laboratory background. And then Ryan Brong, he is our engineer in training who's doing a lot of the legwork, and he serves as a water resources engineer. Kate, Ryan, and I are all located in our Wakefield, Massachusetts office. So the project overview and scope, as we wrote it, provides for the reviewing of existing information, stakeholder engagement, the analysis and the engineering feasibility of alternatives, and the summary of findings and recommendations. I just wanted to show the project objectives. As we've begun to work on this assignment, we really respect and align with the town. That's why we're so excited to be working on this assignment. You guys have really spent a long time thinking about this, working on this. You've done a lot of work to get to the point that you are, and we understand and we're hearing the frustration, and we know that we need to really focus on the facts. We need to think about what is feasible, and we'll talk a lot about, in the next phases, getting to the ranking of criteria that we can all agree to. So we understand that, and our goal is to get to an actionable plan for the near term and the long term. And we really must all adapt. We need to learn from where we've been and move forward to where you can get to a plan that's going to work for Baxter Road, as well as have some implementation throughout the town. So where are we right now? So this is the schedule that's in our contract. You can see where we are right now. I would say we're running a bit over on the review of existing information as we're still gathering information. The stakeholder engagement will continue throughout and is an integral part. And then we are embarking on the alternatives and engineering feasibility analysis, and then the final memorandum. We are still cognizant of the fact that the town has asked us to hurry this up and finish at least a month earlier. I don't really know right now if that's possible, and we'll talk about that. But should we find that that's possible, we will deliver. So we've held our first round of focus groups with all the different teams. And thank you so much to everyone. We met with the orange and the dark red groups. We met with them on March 23rd, and we just held our other meeting with the town yesterday. We received a lot of good information, and there's been a lot of hard work done. So this here shows you the resource and data list review. It's just a snapshot. There really is an unbelievable amount of data available, and we thank all of you and all your teams for your hard work that you're doing in pointing out to us what are the relevant documents. As you saw on that overall schedule, we're taking the 25, plus years of information, and we're gonna squeeze it into the 7-month time frame now that we're working on to get us to an actionable plan. We appreciate all the work that everyone's done to give us the additional items that we're missing. And that's why the initial listening sessions were so important for us to articulate to your teams what we see, what we saw as relevant information, and for the teams to articulate back to us the items that we were missing. So we thank you for your hard work. And really, this is a partnership. We certainly can't do this without your knowledge and without your input. So this is one of the tools that we use to keep things organized in our own heads and to also articulate to your teams, so that we, on the bottom line there in the blue, we're looking at the different storm events. Those are all different sort of data points that are significant. And then on the top line, we've noted some of the major mitigation events. And as you know, your work began well before 2010, but we were consolidating into sort of a more current time period, and we would reflect on items that were important or historical information that has been gained or learned from earlier events, but we're trying to narrow the window. And I think with that, Kate's going to talk a little bit about the alternatives analysis that we'll be undertaking.
Thank you. So we're really beginning this work in earnest after our first focus groups and looking at the alternatives that were laid out in the contract and thinking about how to organize them and do the analysis in the best way possible and take into account all the information we've heard thus far. So the alternatives that are laid out are bluff stabilization, nourishment, retreat and relocate the road, or no action. There's a fifth alternative, but this option is really paired with anything that is selected, which is best management practices. And I'm going to walk through each one of these, but best management practices for homeowners and the community. When we talk about bluff stabilization, we're really talking about stabilizing the bluff system, which includes the toe stabilization. So the existing toe stabilization measures that are in place today fall into this category. And we're really looking at the slope, shape, and amount of vegetation covering the coastal bluff and the adjacent shoreline, and how that's directly related to the susceptibility of the bluff face to ongoing erosion. Sand nourishment, we're talking about potential, for nourishing the beach below the southern bluffs, which could provide short-term benefits, but in the long term, we know that beach nourishment will become more expensive as sand sources are limited. Retreat property and relocate the road and utilities. And, when we talk about these alternatives and the plan that will come out of this, the actionable plan, some of these things may be the near-term alternative and some of these things may be the long-term alternative. So you'll see a combo most likely. No action, leaving the natural shoreline undisturbed is often the least expensive option. And then best management practices, when we talk about this, are really for reducing bluff erosion from surface drainage and shallow subsurface groundwater drainage over the bluff. So reducing that drainage that contributes to erosion from homeowner properties and what people can do on their own properties. We've started to define through our scope of work and in the listening sessions what some of these criteria for assessment of the feasibility are. And then as Jen alluded to, we're hoping to kind of just define other criteria for how we compare these things. So the definition of the purpose, what is the alternative intended to do? how long would it be effective, or if at all, in preventing significant bluff erosion? The initial construction costs in terms of an order of magnitude estimate for comparison between alternatives. What are the operations and maintenance considerations? And constructability, likely issues that could impact the ability to implement the alternative. Other feasibility issues, meaning things like supply of sand and land acquisition, access, emergency services, and specifically just wanted to call out that environmental considerations really fall in here, but you'll see on our tables, we've pulled them out because impacts to endangered species, vegetation, habitat, those are something that's very important to the stakeholders, and they made that clear during our listening sessions. So what we've done is started to think about how we might approach this alternatives analysis. And from our sessions with the stakeholders and the focus groups, what we've come up with is a potential tiered approach to address the concerns and concepts that have been presented to our team from all sides thus far. We'd identify those broad categories to evaluate the alternatives at a high level, and then dig down into specific tier 2 concepts. So the functional coastal processes really speaks to acknowledging the various coastal processes that an alternative may or may not address. And not all components of the system really address all coastal processes. The environmental, societal, and ecological category covers an awareness of the nearshore cobble habitat and fisheries that depend on this habitat, promotion of native and effective vegetation, nesting birds. So this category speaks to some of those things, as well as societal components like beach access, tourism, aesthetics, emergency access. And then the third category looks at structural considerations and costs, including installation, operation and maintenance, design life, funding, and utilities and tax implications. And again, those best management practices for property owners would be included with all of these. So starting to lay out kind of those categories, we're going to break it down. But I just kind of wanted to show the flow here. We're really starting with sort of the matrix look at these different alternatives. We're going to start talking about considerations and trade-offs and how we compare those alternatives, bring those to our stakeholders and vet them a little bit more, and eventually get to that summary concept plan, which is an action plan to outline adaptation over time for near-term and long-term steps. So we're really at the beginning phase of this after listening to everybody's concerns, what data is available, and we can go from there. So a little bit about what we've heard. As Libby alluded to, we've done a little bit of gathering input on both the project mission and the project name. So this was the project mission that we have presented to all three groups. The Baxter Road Feasibility Assessment will create a community-supported, actionable roadmap to implementation of short and long-term solutions for the Baxter Road area that lessen the loss from storm surges and help the community adapt to rising seas and eroding coastlines. And so some of the things we've heard so far as we kind of refine this mission is that community-supported means to some people that this project really has the potential to impact other parts of the island or set the stage for how erosion is looked at in other parts of the island. Loss can mean different things to different people. So maybe we might be choosing a different word there or defining what some of those losses might mean to people. We heard yesterday that we may need to expand on the scope of the word adapt to indicate that really does include all those alternatives, including the do nothing alternative. And we received some positive comments about the words actionable and short and long-term solutions. So stay tuned. We're going to be coming up with some additional refinements to this mission statement. And here are some of the names we got yesterday and throughout the process as we've spoken to the different stakeholders. Things like Baxter Road long-term planning, Sconset Planned Retreat Project. We even had some puns in there. The future is not Sconset in stone. So folks getting creative, but also putting some thought into what this project really should be named. So we're going to try and take some of these that have the same themes and maybe put those to our stakeholder groups to vote on a better name here. And I'm going to hand this back over to Jen.
Yes, so as we've been listening to the groups, we've heard different concerns, and it's important to list them out so that we're sure that we're addressing them. And so you'll hear more about these, but we've heard about the need for impartial analysis, the need to understand unintended consequences, a lot of themes on where to prioritize the town's efforts. We have heard that this is a jewel, the Baxter Road area, and that cultural preservation is very important. We've heard about fairness and equity, the need for affordable housing, a lot of talk about the sand sources and the beach access, as well as budget in terms of, financial constraints and the costs, and then Nantucket's tax base and the implications to everyone townwide. So this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are kind of themes that we've been hearing. And then some of the tensions that we've identified, and these are areas that will really begin to work with the focus with the different teams on. And this is where we'll be working with our current concept is to work with facilitators for each of the teams, because there's going to need to be a bit of work back and forth to make sure that we're adequately identifying, acknowledging, understanding the key tensions that we're identifying. But so far, we've identified that the performance of the tow stabilization as currently installed, that there's differences in opinions on the performance. So we want to talk that through. We understand that there are definitely differences in what's acceptable for short-term and long-term solutions. We've heard about the need to consider the rest of the Nantucket community, particularly in terms of beach access, maintaining the Baxter Road as an area that people enjoy and come to, and the sand budget. The financial considerations and how to set those priorities for the town, and the collaborative decision-making has been a little difficult, I suppose, in the past, and we look forward to helping with that as we move forward. So we've currently identified that these are areas that we will be working to very specifically further define, to the point where we can get all the groups to agree on the different items that we're listing out here. So that's a bit about where we are going. Gave you a little bit of a preview there. So this is going to take time. As you saw, we have the outline going. We have the outline of our matrix going. And how we'll work through it will be to continue to talk through the different key areas that we've identified. And then we will begin to really talk in depth about what are the risks and defining what is acceptable risk. And these items will be in matrices that are shared with all the teams. And so you can see we're thinking right now that the second round of the focus groups would be in June, and that in July we would have a refined alternatives analysis. And of course, there would be vetting before we get to the summary of our findings in September. So that's sort of a loose look ahead schedule. And I think with that, that might be my last full slide. So I think from here, we're ready to talk about any questions you might have, or to maybe talk about when the next time for us to check in with you might be.
Could you unshare the screen so I can see everyone? I'm not sure if anyone has their hand up. Melissa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much to the team at Arcadis. I really enjoyed yesterday's stakeholder meeting, and this is a very complex community issue, and I think you've captured the opportunities and the challenges really well. I look forward to your continued work on this, and I just want to thank you. I think this is very much needed for us to objectively look at how as a community we can best solve this problem. And I've really appreciated your team's work, so thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate all your townspeople's work as well. We couldn't do it without your input. You know, we're squeezing all this information into such a condensed time period. So, you know, we don't pretend to be the experts at everything that you know. And so we greatly appreciate the partnership. But that's one of the things we love about you all, is that you're willing to do the hard work, and it is hard work. So, but we've been in these situations before.
I would definitely echo Melissa's comments and say that I really enjoyed the way you did the polling yesterday. I thought that that was really productive. It's so much harder on Zoom to get input from everyone at once, and I thought that that was really effective. Matt?
Yeah, I feel like we've hired marriage counselors with coastal engineering degrees.
Yep. Well, we've seen a lot of different problems. We've seen a lot of different conflicts. In a way, it is helpful that the equity conversation is so prominent right now in our country. So I think that really helps people. And I guess I just would continue to reiterate that, you know, that we think we have shared values with you. So, you know, Arcadis, a project like this is not easy, and there's a lot of risk, you know, for us too. And we don't take it lightly by any means. And we're working very hard. You can be assured that you have our full attention.
So I know one of your questions was kind of the next time you might want to present to us. And if you're re-engaging with stakeholders in June, I would think after that would be the next time to come to the select board, maybe early July. Does that?
Okay.
But we can continue that conversation in terms of agenda planning.
Yes, absolutely. I think I would be negligent if I didn't say what wonderful staff you have as well. Super knowledgeable.
We're very lucky.
I think there was a poll vote on that yesterday.
No, that was Vince getting a shout out on the poll.
Just for the record, it wasn't me.
Are there any other board comments, or I don't see any public hands raised. I think I'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you so much for being here last night and tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Look forward to continuing the process.
We do too. All right, good night now.
Thank you. Libby, did you want to introduce the next?
Sure. I'm going to actually turn this over to Brian, the finance director, to review what has transpired here in terms of a change recommended in the RFP and supplemental comments if needed by town council. Brian?
Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're here before you for two things: to discuss recent events subsequent to the March 3rd meeting, where by a vote of 4-1, the board voted to pay up to $30,000 in repairs for the jetties awning, and for us to, for the current concessionaire Sandbar LLC, in return for that, to sign it over to the town. Subsequent to that, as I think we explained at the board meeting, this was also dependent on the vendor being able to negotiate a liability question that the vendor had satisfactory to both the town and the vendor. John Giorgio, town council, and I did come to language that we sent to the vendor. We had not received any word back from them as of the March 19th storm, which did rip off a large portion of the actual awning itself in one section. So when that happened, we did have a subsequent conversation. We also, the building inspector, the concessionaire, myself, the fire chief, as well as Amy Baxter and DPW, assistant DPW, deputy DPW director, and facilities director are all met there. At which point the building commissioner indicated that he did not believe that the awning structure could continue to stay up in its current capacity. So with that in mind, we reconvened and determined that there was really no point with that determination by the building inspector for us to actually assume ownership of this, or we wouldn't even be able to pay for any of the repairs, not to mention that the March 19th storm would have changed the scope of the work and we would have had to re-procure everything all over again, which was not something that we had been authorized to do at that point. So in light of that, we're asking for a reconsideration of the vote to pay for the repairs and take the awning down. I will tell you that the awning is actually down. I've been told, I think came down either last week or the beginning of this week. So the town taking ownership is really not in question, but town council has advised that it would be in best course of action would be for the board to reconsider the vote and not pay for the repairs and to not take ownership of it. And as I mentioned, it has been taken down. Second, after that discussion and decision, we do have to discuss we have come to a new recommendation in terms of the starting point for the lease, given the change in the dynamics for the potential upcoming seasons after this lease is over. We're recommending a lower annual base rent given.
Ryan, should I take the reconsideration vote first and then go through that?
Yes,
is
that's
that
correct.
okay with you? Is someone open to making the motion to reconsider? It has to be someone who voted in the affirmative.
I think I did, and I think I will make that motion to reconsider.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Thank you. That carries unanimously, and then maybe take us through the changes.
Erica, would you put that back up for me, please? Thank you. Next page, please, Erica. So given the fact that the awning does not exist anymore and will not be there most likely for the start of the new concession contract in 2022, we had originally, with the way the current situation was, recommended a beginning base lease of $150,236, which was 3% over the current year's lease. We're actually recommending to reduce that rent to $120,000 to adjust for the potential impact of loss of awning on the business due to inclement weather. We do expect that there may be some weather challenges this year, and we do expect that those will potential impacts of weather challenges, not only this year, but in future years with the awning no longer as an option to cover that portion of the facility. So we've recommended to adjust that to the beginning rent of $120,000, which was the rent for the first year of the 2017 of this agreement. There's been no other changes to the recommendations other than that particular change there.
Thoughts, comments? Motions?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? On the motion, Matt?
Yeah, I'm in favor. I was going to second it.
Oh, okay. So all those in favor by roll call: Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. So I guess now the RFP will go forward.
Yes.
Sorry, wasn't there another motion on page 1 that was supposed to be done if the vote was reconsidered?
I thought that that was included in here of the changes to the RFP now.
I'm not sure, so I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah,
John?
well, yeah, the change, if I remember, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the RFP has changed and the awning will be, if it is installed in future years, will be the responsibility of the tenant, and it will be temporary and able to be moved. So that was the other change that was in there, if I got it right.
John, I think that we had recommended that they make a motion to direct us not to pay or to take ownership. Is that correct?
So I'm just missing a motion. We reconsidered, but then we needed to take another vote
Exactly.
to affirm. Okay, so let's take that vote. Someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. I do just hope that if any new structure is put in, that it's with a real understanding and approval by the town, not just by the HTC, but by town administration, rather than what happened last time.
I think the town,
Matt?
yeah, any change in the lease, any change to the structure requires the town's approval. So, as it would with anyone. So that either we didn't get.
I just wanted to make it clear, because that's not exactly how it went down with the last awning.
No, that's true. And I thank everyone for changing it. I just want to make one statement, if I can, real quick. Is, I think that my comments and concerns were in no way a reflection of George Kelly, Nick Nass, the Sandbar Restaurant. They're good guys, and the families and their employees have run a professional operation, and they service the public really well. My concerns are independent of who is the tenant, and they were solely based on what makes sense for the town. So, when I brought these up, it had nothing to do with that. There's a little bit of misunderstanding, like that I had something out for people. These guys are good guys, and they may win the bid and they may not. But I think that wasn't anything to do with my concerns. My concerns had to do with, following a valid lease, and I'm glad that we are doing so. I don't believe that the storm, really was really the issue, but I'm glad that, I think we need to do better in the future on these types of issues, and I'm glad that we have done that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next item. Libby, review of 2021 committee.
So last August, the board had a discussion about developing a more transparent committee process. And we had a kind of a small staff group with one board member that worked on this, and we've developed a revised process that's modeled after the process used in the town of Dennis. And I think Erica is going to take us through some of the policy decisions that are up to the board to make, but so I don't think there's too many. And then we want to get the board's okay of our committee appointment timeline, because that time is moving on for that. Erica?
I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So in your packet, you'll have a new timeline with some new dates, just a review of the openings of what seats are there right now, and then our draft policy statement and procedures. A couple of matters for board discussion. You have got 4 committees that aren't part of the annual renewal process on the timeline. One is the Cannabis Advisory Committee. All of their terms were set to expire on June 30th of this year. They got waylaid due to COVID and feel they still have some work to do. So we suggest extending their terms to 2022 for now, and then we can reevaluate that at another time. The Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, same thing, all terms set to expire June 30th of this year. We suggest extending the terms to 2022 for now. I will say that I did get an email from one of the at-large members who declined to continue past 2021. So we may need to advertise that seat. The Senior Center Committee, they presented its final report and their work is done for the time being. The Assistant Town Manager, Rachel Day, did say that at some point they might need to be reconvened if and when the Select Board makes a decision about the future of the Senior Center. And then the Town Government Study Committee, they plan to hand out a report at the annual town meeting. They did not come forward with any warrant articles to make changes to any of the bylaws or charters. So we suggest that the report gets accepted, and per the town code, it gets reconstituted in 2025 because it's every 5 years. So those are the recommendations.
Madam Chair. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that I did speak with the chair today of that committee. And as Erica mentioned, they are planning to distribute their written report at town meeting. However, we discussed them coming to the board with that to review that report before town meeting. So that will be coming, and there may be a recommendation in there. I'm not sure, I haven't seen the report yet, as to some sort of standing committee that could be activated when needed to look at specific governmental changes that the board might be considering. So that may make its way into their report, but just FYI.
Thank you. Did you want us to take action on these tonight, or to take these into consideration as we do when we do the committee appointments?
I think it would be good to take action on these tonight, because if we are going to extend the terms, I'd like to notify the committee members and give them an opportunity to let us know whether or not they want to extend that, so we have time to fill those seats before their terms end.
Is the board comfortable taking action? Does someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, it's Melissa. I move to approve this, and I just want to also thank Erica. She's put a lot of hard work into this, and even though Libby acknowledged there was a small working group, I know that Erica did a lot of the heavy lifting on this, so thank you. So yes, I make a motion to approve the recommendations as outlined.
Thank you, Melissa. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor by roll call: Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Thank you.
Great. So I did just want to quickly review the timeline with you. I really tried to make sure that I went through all the notes, all the comments that we received of our procedures last year. And one of the, I want to say it's one of the board comments came forward that, I don't know if you see here, but we've got a deadline when certain committees will be applications will be heard, and then we usually have the meeting where the applicants come towards you. So we're suggesting a new date in between where just the names of the applicants who have submitted are read aloud, and that the applications are in the board's packet, just to give the public and the board more time to see who has applied. And that is really the only change to the timeline. The committee openings information is just the same thing you get every year. It just gives you an idea of which seats are open. And then we have the draft policy. And as Libby and I think Melissa said earlier, we use the town of Dennis's policy as the base for this. But again, really tried hard to incorporate a lot of the comments from the public, from the board, from council. So I think we've got a fairly complete statement that really incorporates all of that. So if you have any questions on anything.
I thought it was really, you did a really thorough job with it.
Thank you.
And covered all the points. Anybody else? Christy?
I just wanted to add that I really like that there's a policy for committee members coming in if something opens up, because that was always kind of unclear as to how long we would advertise or how we'd appoint that. So it's really nice to have a policy for that. So thank you, Erica.
You're welcome. I will note that one thing that the policy now does is it makes the deadlines that are advertised hard deadlines. We are not accepting late applications for anyone. If we don't end up filling a seat, it'll come into the next round. So.
Yeah, and I appreciated the sort of 2 weeks of notice. Catherine Slattery?
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I was talking to myself. Is that Erica? Thank you, Madam Chair. Erica, is that information that you just screen shared on the website or somewhere available?
It's in our packet.
In the board's packet tonight, and we will post it on, now that we've reviewed it with the board, we'll have it posted on the website either tomorrow or Friday.
Thank you so much.
Would someone like to make a motion to adopt the policy? Oh, Melissa, did you have a comment?
I did, and then I'm happy to entertain a motion, but I wonder if it might be prudent to, and if this would interrupt anything, Erica, for us to give, since this is the first public opportunity to see this, to make sure that everyone has seen it and read it, and if there's any comments or feedback, we could vote on it at our next meeting, because I do think we've had a lot of community input, and I don't think that that would affect any of our timelines. I'm confident.
I think
I'm confident that this policy is a good idea, but I think it was a very sensitive subject at the last appointment process. So,
and we can post the draft statement in our committee board page, noting that it's a draft. So that's fine. We can bring it back on the
that would be wonderful.
Yeah, let's put it on the agenda for the 28th. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Is everybody comfortable with the timeline though? Can we move forward with what's outlined in that?
Yes, and if you need a motion to approve that, I'd make that.
I think that we have consensus.
Great.
And we'll adopt it
you.
on the 28th, and so that people have more time to think about it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
Next up, we have select boards reports and comments. This is review adoption of any select board comments for the 2021 annual town meeting warrant articles. We don't always necessarily make any comments, but we do from time to time, and this is the opportunity. I think really the best way is for me to go through number by number, and someone raise their hand if they want to have a discussion on a particular item. Does that make everyone comfortable with that? Okay. Number one, receipt of reports. You will have to call out because I can't see you all. Number 2, appropriation unpaid bills. Number 3, appropriation prior year articles. Number 4, revolving accounts spending limits for FY 2022. Number 5, appropriation reserve fund. Number 6, fiscal year 2021 general fund budget transfers. Number 7, personnel compensation plans for fiscal year 2022. Number 8, appropriation fiscal year 2022 general fund operating budget. Number 9, health and human services. Number 10, appropriation general fund capital expenditures. Number 11, appropriation Newtown Road transportation improvements.
Yeah,
Matt?
Don. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I would like us on 11. I would like the select board to strongly support 11 and 13. In some, even just a select board. I think that we have an obligation to Newtown Road. We built the building that has caused those issues, and I think the Children's Beach Pump Station, we really want that to pass. So I would like to see a strong, I think there's other important things, but if I had to pick 2, I'd pick those 2. So I'd like us to, strongly support those,
Okay. I mean, I would certainly agree with strongly supporting both of those initiatives. I'm not sure exactly what would the comment be, just that the select board agrees with the finance committee motion.
Yeah, we agree with the finance committee motion, strongly support, these two,
Passing these two articles. Is there a second?
And I just add a comment and maybe saying that they support our strategic plan, our goals.
Well, definitely Newtown Road supports our main transportation goals. Is that
a second, Don?
Yep, Matt, is that okay, that add? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll second the motion. Thank you.
All those in favor of those 2 comments? Matt Fee?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Okay, I didn't actually go to number 12, appropriation reconstruction of Lovers Lane, and then we just covered number 13. Number 14, appropriation supplemental funding for construction of Novadeer Fieldhouse. Number 15, appropriation fiscal year 2022 enterprise fund operations. Matt?
I'm struggling on 14. I'm not sure. I don't want to say anything about it, but just those expenses and for what we're getting, I look at that and think, should we be building a gazebo with no sides or something? I just, they $1 million something for that building seemed obscene. So, anyway.
The cost of
we need to make a
staggering right now. 15, appropriation fiscal year 2022 enterprise fund operations. 16, appropriation enterprise fund capital expenditures. 17, enterprise funds fiscal year 2021 budget transfers. 18, appropriation waterways improvement fund. 19, appropriation ambulance reserve fund. 20, appropriation ferry embarkation fee. 21, appropriation county assessment. 22, appropriation finalizing fiscal year 2022 county budget. 23, appropriation affordable housing trust fund. 24, appropriation affordable housing trust fund. 25. Oh, sorry.
Christy. On Article 24, can we just support the Finance Committee motion?
I would be in favor of that. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Matt Fee?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. 25, rescind unused borrowing authority. 26, appropriation other post-employment benefits trust fund. 27, renewal of Board of Health septic system betterment loan program. 28, special stabilization fund for substance abuse efforts. 29, appropriation fiscal year 2022 senior work off program. 30, appropriation for special purpose stabilization fund for airport employee accrued liabilities. 31, appropriation for special purpose stabilization fund for town employees accrued liabilities. 32, appropriation fiscal year 2022 community preservation committee. 33, community preservation committee fiscal year 2021 budget transfers. 34, appropriation incineration of solid waste. 35, yes?
Sorry, on 34, we had a previous comment from last year. I'm comfortable with keeping that comment for this year.
Okay.
Yeah, what was that? What was that comment? What's the?
Thank you, Christy, for mentioning that. I meant to point that out. That was in there from last year. It says the board supports the finance committee motion and comment. One of the board's strategic plan goals is, quote, provide data-driven recommendations on island-wide solid waste management guided by principles of sustainability, end quote. As a result, all available options will be considered for long-term solid waste disposal and management. Long-term viability of a landfill adjacent to Long Pond storm tide pathways is a critical concern.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Christy. I think that that's a really good comment and should remain in. And very much in line with what we're doing.
Can I speak to 34, Don?
Oh, well, can we just?
Oh, no, 35, sorry.
After we vote on 34. Is there,
I'll make the motion to keep that comment in.
Thank you. Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. And then on 35 is appropriation legal opinion for beach access. Matt?
Yeah, my thought there was a comment, something along the lines of the select board supports William's suggestion and has directed staff to research and prevent policies to ensure continued access. Something like that.
Can we say something like we've engaged counsel to do further research on this topic and explore options?
Right, yes. Yeah, something along those lines. I think it's important that we comment on it because it's a key item.
Okay.
That's a motion. I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you clear on that, Libby?
Not 100%. I'll do my best, Dawn, and maybe I can send it to you and you can take a look. And I think I got the gist, but I'd want somebody to take a quick look before.
Okay.
I can type out what I have here and you can make it sound smarter.
That would be great, Matt.
I was going to say, why don't you run it by myself and Matt?
Or Matt, just send me yours and I'll fix it up and send it back.
Yeah, well, same thing.
Sorry, thank you.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee?
Aye.
Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. We'll just refine the language. 36, appropriation hazardous waste. 37, reestablish Parks and Recreation Department. 38, affordable and year-round housing stabilization fund.
Well,
39.
Can I go back to 37?
Yes.
I support that. I'm not sure if anyone else does. I think that that's, but. Go to 38.
Okay. 38, affordable and year-round housing stabilization fund. 39, zone. Oh, Matt.
On 38, should we have a comment that says that we recognize this may be a source of income and we'll look at it for the future? Yeah, so.
So can I just add, the finance committee updated their comment that illustrates all the funding sources going to affordable housing based on the other articles 8, 10, and 24. So So I think that illustrates our commitment to affordable housing funding this year.
I think it might make sense for us to say that we support the Finance Committee's recommendation, but we're willing to look at alternatives in the future. The concern of the Select Board is that that this is a more difficult funding to be available to react towards housing opportunities, something like that. Melissa?
I agree with that. I thought the letter that was drafted for the paper tomorrow had some really great language in there in terms of that supporting and the allocation essentially of that funding going to the department through Article 8. I don't know if you want to make it that complex, but I thought it was very well done.
Thank you. The letter's a little bit long, but I think we
not the whole letter, but I think there was some language in there that could be gleaned. Yeah.
I think the Reed article has some, I'm confident in the stabilization fund. I think if housing is doing a good job, the money will come out. It's positive because it's earmarked to that. It doesn't have to be at 2/3. I think I think there's a lot of positive with that. If we don't get a housing bank, this might be a great way to do it. So I just think in the future it's good. I don't agree with sort of some of the things in the letter. I think it's great, and I want to make sure though that we're focusing people on voting the 3 articles and not I don't want to see people pick one or the other and not get it. I'd rather see 20, 24, 20, 25. I'd rather see that pass and this go down, so how do we relay that? I think we relay that by saying we don't support it now, but we will consider it in the future as necessary.
Can we say something like that we support the Finance Committee's current recommendations on housing, but we are certainly willing to look at this as a funding source in the future?
I think that's great.
Does that someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Matt Fee.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, number 39, a zoning map change, C-Tech to R5, Gray Lady Lane and Bartlett Road. Number 40, zoning map change, RC2 to R5, 8 and 10 Appleton Road. 41, zoning map change, RC2 to C-Tech, Appleton Road, Bartlett Road, and Perry Lane. 42, zoning map change, R5 to CN, Bartlett Road and Youngs Way. 43, zoning map change, RC2 to R5 and CN, 33 Old South Road and 24 Tacoma Way. 44, zoning map change, RC2 to R5, Tom's Way. 45, zoning map change, RC to CN, Francis Union and Washington Streets and Salt Marsh Way. 46, zoning map change, R20 and LUG2 to VR, Osprey and Tatima Way and Hummock Pond Road. 47, zoning bylaw amendment and zoning map amendment, technical amendments. 48, zoning bylaw amendment, swimming pool residential. 40.
Can we hold on that for a second, Don?
Yep.
There's 2 different motions between the planning board and the FinCom, and I would like us to support the planning board motion on environmentally and quality of life impacts of pools. I think we should support it.
Melissa?
I'm really torn. I appreciate the effort and the environmental impact and quality of life, but I'm not sure that I think this article is the best way to get to that. So I would not be in favor of supporting that comment.
I would be in favor of supporting the Finance Committee's motion. I don't think that the planning board undertook the proper polling process for the people in the impacted zone. I don't think that people definitively are even clear on this. And I don't particularly understand why it's being undertaken. I think that there's certainly discussion to be had about quality of life issues and environmental issues, but they're much broader than this article that's very targeted to certain zones of the island without real understanding as to why. I don't know that we need to make a comment either way if we're in disagreement.
I think that's fine. If we reflect the electorate, so we'll let it happen.
Okay, fair enough. Next up, zoning map change RC2 to CN and or LUG2 and LUG2 to CN Bartlett Farm Road and that was submitted by Bartlett. Zoning map change R5 to CN 10 and 12 Youngs Way. Zoning map change SR10 to SR1 or SOH 10 Clifton Street. Zoning 52, zoning map change R10 to CN 3 Cobble Court. 53, zoning map change VR to VN Pulpus Road and Chatham Road. 54, zoning map change VR to R20 Chatham Road, Monomoy Road, Milestone Road, and Pulpus Road. 55, zoning map change LUG1 to R20 Chatham Road. 56, zoning map change LUG1 to VR 8 and 10 Chatham Road. 57, zoning map change R20 to R5 Mayflower Circle and Evergreen Way. 58, zoning map change R20 to CTEC and or CN Old South Road and Airport Road. 59, zoning map change LUG1 to R40 18 Evergreen Way. 60, zoning map change LUG2 to R20 Rugged Road. 61, zoning map change LUG3 to LUG1 Driscoll Way. 62, zoning bylaw amendment island perimeter restrictions. 63, zoning bylaw amendment.
Sorry, Don, that's another one I think that, that I support. I'm not sure if the board would, but I think that's something we could put we support that article.
Thoughts on this one?
What would our comment be?
Could you say that again, Jason? I missed that.
Jason asked Matt what he was suggesting we comment.
Yeah, we're in favor of the article.
The article or the planning board motion?
I've got my notes here. I'd have to look at it, but
I'm trying to get to the motion that I'm not on that page. Can somebody?
The motion is supportive, but it does make some changes, and there is a comment. Oh, thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Do you still want it? Are you still reading?
Don, is that then the what's before us is a comment supporting the planning board's motion? Is that what we're being asked?
Yeah, I mean, the way this reads, I would say we support the planning board and the finance committee, as they said they support the planning board's recommendation.
Yeah, and I think that's all it has to say. I mean, but I think it's an important article.
Sure. If you're making that motion, Matt, I'll second it.
Okay. I'll call Matt.
Aye.
Melissa.
Aye.
Chris Santella.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
No.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries 4-1. 63, zoning bylaw amendment, commercial mid-island height restriction. 64, zoning bylaw amendment, home rule petition, coastal erosion liability waiver. 65, affordable housing requirements. 66, public property damage. 67, prohibiting roundabouts near schools. Does anyone feel like we should make a comment on this?
What would the comment be?
That we support the Finance Committee's motion. Jason?
I think the reason I voted no to the last one, I think we get in trouble if we just make comments that we support something, because then we're not doing it for others. So do we kind of not support that? If we make a comment that we support and here's why, then I think there's a little more oomph to it, or against it, or.
I think that's a good suggestion, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing would be if we wanted to get deeper into it and talk about the amount of planning that's gone into considering a roundabout at Four Corners. Melissa?
I was just going to say that, Don, that if there was a little more substance to the comment about the work of the transportation planner, the planning department, that roundabouts are safe. But I'm not sure if we're going to change any minds with that comment. So, but if we are to make a comment, that would be where I would feel more comfortable making it.
Matt?
Hopefully our new transportation planner can do traffic modeling and I think if we model it and show that we aren't just pushing the impacts, to the next intersection, then I think that then I'd be more happy to support it. I think that there's still some uncertainties. It flows through at the Stop and Shop, great, and then it just backs up at the next spot. So I don't think we want to be, doing that everywhere. We can't roundabout everywhere.
Yeah, Matt, I totally agree with you. I'm just very much thinking about Four Corners, and there's a really massive safety situation there. That's not totally about the traffic backup. It's the misalignment of the streets and the way everything converges. And I just feel very strongly that of anywhere that we might want to consider a roundabout on the island, that is the most important spot. And it's not as much about moving vehicles as it is about safety.
And that's a good point, Don. And I probably would fall on that side. But my point about the transportation modeling is that we need to get, more of the electorate to fall on that side, and understand what we're doing. So, if I had to vote, I probably would vote that way, but.
Okay, well, we don't have to make a comment. I just thought I would raise the point. Okay, next. 68, real estate transfer land from roadway roundabout purposes to school committee control. 69, complaint committee. 70, bylaw amendment noise. 71, bylaw amendment noise. 72, bylaw amendment council for human services. 73, bylaw amendment animals. 74, bylaw amendment car rental agencies, registration of. 75, bylaw amendment single-use plastics. 76, bylaw amendment bicycles. 77, bylaw amendment bicycles. 78, bylaw amendment bicycles. 79, bylaw amendment outdoor lighting. 80, bylaw amendment noise gas-powered leaf blowers. 81, bylaw amendment community preservation committee. 82, bylaw amendment streets and sidewalks. 83, bylaw amendment board of sewer commissioners. Town sewer district map changes Evergreen Way and Monahans Road. 84, sewer commissioners 18 Evergreen Way. 85, sewer commissioners 154 R Cliff Road. 86, sewer commissioners 18 Kimball Avenue. 87, sewer commissioners 8 Isabel's Way. 88, sewer commissioners 1 Morgan Square. 89, sewer commissioners Kimball Avenue and Heather Lane. I mean, we have we already made our comments on these with when we reviewed them. 90, I have a conflict if anyone wants to make any recommendations on this.
I also have a conflict, Dawn.
So I'll just keep going. 91.
Does any, I mean, I think I've got something to throw out there for the non-conflicted. The select board is concerned about loss of year-round housing and increased commercial uses in residential neighborhoods. If the amendment isn't satisfactory, if we don't have a satisfactory amendment, we should suggest a work group to refine and return in 2022. Something along those lines. You know, I think because here's my take on it. I think what has been identified is some of these issues are crucial to housing on the island, to us being able to run businesses, you know, and employ a bunch of different aspects. And so, you know, but I'm not sure, you know, so if this doesn't pass, I'd like to think that we're going to still be working on it. And I'll give two examples. It's sort of anecdotal, but it's what's happening. And it's a result of the short-term rental situation on the island. In the past, we'd have, you know, at the peak of the summer, about 10 employees every year. Our families are here all summer, have the house all summer, they don't rent. This year, they're applying and they're saying, yeah, but you have to house me for 3 weeks. Well, we don't have housing for 3 weeks. And we ask, why is that? Well, our parents, you know, got an offer to rent their house. It was too good to pass up. We've always done it, but we didn't. And that's anecdotal. It's a handful of kids. The other one that's happening is we get thousands of applications every year. We normally get a pile of applications from groups that have rented homes and they're just out of college, or they're out, a bunch of Irish girls, a bunch of kids from North Carolina. We get groups and and their father or mother have rented them a house for the summer. We are seeing none of those this year. And it's partly COVID, but it's been a change. It's not just COVID. It's because it's that they aren't available. There are restaurants that I'm good friends with who have lost their 10, 15 year, rental for their employees. It's been switched over. So I think that there are some issues going on. It's more than anecdotal. There are impacts. It's hard. It's going to be harder and harder to get a plumber and get and employ people to, all those things. And so if this doesn't pass, at town meeting, how are we going to ensure that we continue looking at it and working on it? I'd like some sort of comment about that.
Matt, could you repeat your comment again?
We're concerned about loss of year-round housing and increased commercial uses in residential neighborhoods. If amendment isn't satisfactory, we suggest a work group be formed and refine the article and return in 2022.
So it's just the three of us, me, you, and Christy. I like the first sentence. I don't know about the work group part, just for me. But I like making some kind of comment that I agree with you that this issue is crucial. And I personally like some parts of this article, but I don't know if I couldn't vote for the work group and continue on the citizen warrant article. I think there's another way to do it, I think. Christy or Matt?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it was actually the first sentence that it's not just housing that short-term rentals are affecting. There's so many things that, it goes into the use of our roads and our beaches and our sewer and our landfill. And so I liked the comment about the commercial use in residential areas, but I think just focusing on affordable housing shouldn't be the intent of the article.
And I agree with that, Christy. I'm throwing out a possibility. And the reason I say return in 2022 is I've got enough experience to know if there isn't a date on it and there isn't someone responsible, then nothing will happen. We have to build some sort of consensus over what is accept, what is the right way to handle this that works for the, all the various constituents, for the real estate agents and for the, the homeowner, seasonal homeowners who rent a few weeks. What is the right, how do we do this? And, I'm worried that it won't happen unless there's some direction given. I don't know what that direction is.
Well, if the select board wants to put push a direction policy wise, and we would work with Affordable Housing Trust and Tucker and Town Admin and do that. I don't know if we should or could do it in a comment on the article. And then I also have another thought of, there's only 3 of us here. It's barely a majority of this because we don't know how Melissa and Don feel about it to put a comment in. I just wanted to put that out there. Christy, are you okay with with Matt's suggested sentence?
I wish that we could see it on the screen because I'm trying to, I don't want to make you keep rereading it over and over again. But I kind of agree with you, Jason, that putting the resources forward doesn't need to be in the motion. I think when we do a recap of town meeting after it happens and when we have an outcome, then that's where we can decide as a board if we need a policy. I don't think short-term rentals are anything that's going away, and there is a huge economic boom for our businesses because of it. And so I think there needs to be a bigger policy discussion on, what do we want to see with short-term rentals? But this is a citizen warrant article, so I think it's also really important to hear what comes forward on town meeting floor. So I almost feel like it's maybe not worth having the comment unless it's just something along the lines of, I can't even think of anything. I don't know.
Matt, do you have a response?
Yeah, I'll read it one more. I'll read the first sentence one more time. I'll take off the direction, and I'll say, the select board is concerned about the loss of year-round housing and increased commercial uses in residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, we support the finance committee's, do we support the finance committee's motion and that sentence? And Deanne and Rick, I'll get to you.
So their motion was negative.
Right.
Their motion is to make this thing go away. So the question is, how do, I don't want it to go. I want the discussion to continue. And so we can work on it. And so I don't know, I don't want to just support them because, that was.
Okay, well, I support the finance committee motion because they wanted more data. They wanted more information. That's the way I read their general motion. Christy or Matt, I'm going to go to Deanne and Rick here in a second.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think in its current form that the FinCom motion makes sense and that I support them. So I'd want this to be an and, there are valid concerns, just like we did for Clifford Williams article where we support the FinCom, but we also are looking into alternatives. So I think it can be an and statement.
Matt, you okay if I go to Rick and?
Yes.
Okay. Erica, can you let Rick in?
Jason, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to pass along kind of an observation. I think I like to separate the data backing up the reason for the article in the first place from the solution. And the data indicates that our year-round housing for rentals is going down substantially. And my sense is what Matt is trying to get at is that this is an important community issue. And I think the board would be well advised to recognize that that is an issue. And that's a little bit what Christy was trying to get at. And if you don't say that, the implication is, it's not, let's just carry on regardless. And I think it's very different from that. If you carry on the projections of the rental information from the US Census data and go out 10 years, we're going to lose a lot of year-round housing for a lot of people we wish could live here. And I think the board needs to step up right now and support in some way in this article that this deserves active involvement of the select board, the planning board, and the NP and EDC. It's a very serious long-term issue on the type of community we all live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Deanne?
Jason, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to make a different point. I think that there is a model for how to deal with this issue for how we dealt with the fertilizer regulations that town meeting, there was an article brought forth about fertilizer regulations that was very divisive. It had certain people on one side and it had the landscapers on the other side. And it was not approved at town meeting, but I believe it was the select board agreed to form a work group, and it was the Article 69 work group, and it brought all of the people to the table, and they worked for a whole year, and they developed a set state-of-the-art best practices fertilizer regulations that were then adopted at the following town meeting. And to me, that's an example of how we can have leadership from the select board to work an issue and to find consensus and to bring about a solution. So I hope you would support. I'm not sure whether it was in Matt's motion to establish a work group to continue this, but at least if it were considered in some way so that it doesn't just die at this town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. That's a great model example, the fertilizer issue and how a work group came out of that. Yeah, Matt?
Yeah, and that's sort of the rationale. That was what, that's sort of what I'm thinking about. If this thing, it's very politicized. I've written to, everyone that's written to us on both sides, I've responded back to all of them to date. And a lot of the sort of, Nantucket Together, a lot of the opponents of this are very concerned about a lot of the same issues that I'm addressing. They need plumbers too. They need people that, clean their houses, and they don't want the island, they don't want to solve housing by building 10,000 units all around the island and making it a place they don't want to live. So I think that they understand they understand too. And I think would be a willingness if something doesn't pass at town meeting. I think there is a willingness on both sides to get together. It's clearly not there now. The rhetoric and the ads and everything, it's not, I don't think it's there yet, but so.
Christine?
Really liked the comments from the Athertons, and I'm wondering if we do something along the lines of we support the FinCom's recommendation, and we also want to make sure that we have a continued discussion and support an economic impact and other impacts of short-term rentals on our community, not just housing, quality of life, everything. I'm kind of rambling, but I think that could be something of a motion.
I was trying to scribble.
Second it.
I was trying to scribble it. Support the FinCom recommendation and continue discussion. Maybe Erica, you got this. Support of.
We support continued conversation of the impact of short-term rentals.
Yes.
On housing, quality of life.
And again, I think I'm plugging for it. If something agreeable doesn't come out of past town meeting, I would love to see an Article 90 work group formed. That's the, so to ensure that something, so to ensure that we are putting attention to it.
Yeah, I like what Christy said. Matt, are you close? Are you okay with something like that? Are we getting close?
We're getting close, but I guess the question is, do you guys support a work group if something positive doesn't come, something agreeable? If town meeting doesn't decide this, do you support a work group to continue?
I lost audio. Hold on.
Yeah.
What's that, Christy? What's that? I didn't hear you.
She lost audio.
Oh, okay. Sorry. She said I lost audio, and I said I didn't hear you. That's interesting. Well, we're getting close. Yeah, I support that, Matt. What in having the town and Affordable Housing Trust a part of that group. I don't know if we want to run it or we're a part of it, but some conversation of call it the three groups, right? Whether it's Act Now and the other group and the town, and just getting all the stakeholders together to figure it out, I think it makes sense. Whether we use the fertilizer model or something like that. I think you're shaking your head, Christy's shaking her head, trying to figure out how to word that.
My audio is back on. Sorry about that.
Well, do you want to take a crack at that, Jason? And it just, I like, they talked, it's a serious issue. I like those terms.
Okay. Can I email you something, Libby? What's the time frame on this?
We got to get this done by tomorrow, end of day tomorrow. If you can even just scribble something together, Jason, I can maybe fix it up a bit. Just like maybe give me the elements of what you want to have. Do you want a work group?
Okay. All right.
Do you support the FinCom motion? What's the work group going to do?
Yeah, I think we were close with what Christy said, Matt.
Yeah, I don't think we have to understand the work group or form that now or anything. I just think the idea that this is a serious issue, and the select board will, if town meeting doesn't decide, this select board will, will form a work group and work on it.
So I don't know, I'm not sure if everybody's agreeing to use the words work group, but Christy had something about supporting the FinCom recommendation and encouraging continued conversation of the impact of short-term rentals on quality of life in residential neighborhoods or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what we start with.
Okay.
Go to Brooke Moore.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I suggest something along the lines of the select board supports the FinCom motion and in addition supports a thorough review of the impact of short-term rentals on the community and suggests a continued conversation led by the Affordable Housing Trust and the NP and EDC of potential regulations.
Matt, Christy, you like that? Go ahead, Matt.
I think the conversation has to be broader than those two groups. I think there needs to be sort of the opponents, and I think there's a broader coalition needs to be built.
I like what Brooke said. Could you add in something general like other stakeholders or community or something? I think, Brooke, what I think you're doing is trying to keep it within our purview. Brooke, you can go ahead and respond to that.
Am I still?
Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it would be maybe a conversation led by the a community conversation led by the Affordable Housing Trust and the NP and EDC. Or something along those lines. But I absolutely, all stakeholders need to be in this conversation. 100%.
I couldn't write down quick enough what Brooke was saying, but if somebody else did, I think that's where we could start.
Well, maybe Brooke can email that language to Libby.
Sure. Happy to.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you.
And I'm afraid to put more on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund's plate to lead this conversation. I think that's and I think it, I don't want it to be, I'm with Christy. I don't want it just tied to housing. I think, who the right person is to lead it, I don't know right now, but it's got to, it has to be, but we're going in the right direction. I mean, it's.
Okay. We go to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Christy. We'll go to Deanne.
I was going to say, I think that we support the discussion, and who's leading that might come out after town meeting. I mean, it might be the citizen warrant or the sponsors of the article who want to lead studies and discuss, other regulations around short-term rentals. And so I don't know if we necessarily need to say who's going to be the lead right now.
Okay. It might be helpful to have what Brooke's comment and Christie's, and then maybe pull those together, and then we can figure that out tonight or tomorrow morning. Libby, can we go to Deanne?
Jason, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Again, I reference back to the Article 69 work group as a model of how to work a contentious issue like this. And it was really the select board that was the leader in putting together a work group that brought all of the parties together, and they felt it was a fair and open and transparent process. And the thing that was so good about that was it brought people to the table like, and I hope he doesn't mind my mentioning his name, but Mark Lucas from the golf club. It brought people into town government who had expertise who had not been involved before. And I think everyone who was involved agreed that it was a very uplifting experience, and the outcome was a positive for Nantucket. It was a set of fertilizer regulations that were considered best practices. And as I recall, the select board at the time asked that such a work group be convened and that it report back to the following town meeting. So there was a specific timeline and a specific expectation that proved to be a win-win for for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. If we go to Brooke Moore and then Rick.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down, but I would say I agree. I mean, it really doesn't matter who leads the discussion. I think and I think a work group is a really good idea, and a facilitated conversation among all the stakeholders is what's critical, with an eye toward crafting regulations, reasonable regulations that can be broadly accepted by town meeting.
Maybe Brooke should write it for us, Jason.
Yeah, right.
That's impressive.
We go to Tobias.
Thank you, board members. I wasn't gonna tune in, but I appreciate the commentary as the sponsor of the article, and just wanted to relay one point on the discussion of, relating your comments to the discussions that went on at the FinCom. To be frank, there was very limited capacity or interest by the FinCom to engage in depth on this discussion. They wanted to, in my opinion, vote no on the article and go on to other things. And, I can say through the Neighborhood First process, I think it was a challenging process, but ultimately something everybody voted very well in favor of. And in the context of short-term rentals in Article 90, that was not the case. And so I would say, as a member of the board in the past, there is a value that the select board has in your opinions and the direction you feel as elected members of the community, not appointed, in the direction of the town. And I think that should be reflected in your comments. And lastly, I'll add in, I've had a number of discussions about changes and modifications with folks to this article. I'm interested in all sorts of variations. I'm interested in solutions, and I know Act Now is interested in solutions. And I tell folks every day, we are going to have regulations on short-term rentals. It is not a question of if, it's a question of when and what form those will be exactly, and what level of control we will have over the sustainability of a middle class on the island that owns homes. And so I appreciate the discussion, but just wanted to make those 2 points. And here to work with anybody who's wants to work on the article over the next 2 years, it will happen. Bylaws are changed day in and day out. I hope town meeting will support this article, but if not, we can make changes to it. If they do support it, we can make changes to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobias. Deanne, you have your hand up? Oh, she took it down. Okay. So Matt and Christy, are you okay with me using some of the more general language that Brooke is sending and what Christy originally put out about with the main point of 2 main points, I guess. We support the FinCom recommendation, and we strongly support, whether it's, I don't have the wording in front of me, further conversation with town involvement. Maybe not that we run it. That's a very big generalization, but.
Yeah, I would say we support a continued conversation around the impacts of short-term rentals on our community.
Okay.
Like the impacts of short-term rentals are a serious issue.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to, that we need to deal with over the next year. But I don't know how to say it, but I'm a little worried. I'm not sure I fully 100% support the FinCom recommendation. I think some of that was, we've asked these questions and they would get, Act Now was giving answers at the meetings I saw, but they weren't answers people wanted to hear. And the opposition was sort of undermining the answers and pretending they weren't real. They didn't agree with them. So they weren't even agreeing on on the base of the facts to begin with, which is why I think a work group is so important. So I keep pushing for it because, we've got to get to a basis of what are the facts that we're working from first, but I do feel like, having spoken to a lot of people on both sides, I feel like the individuals might be able to get there. I think that so anyway.
Well, I would not vote to put a comment in that doesn't say that we, I would want to say that we support the FinCom. So if you're not into that, Matt, then it's 2-1. And I don't know if we should put in a comment 2-1 on a warrant article for the select board. I'll just leave it blank then. Or we can think about.
I'm willing to support him if it gets a comment in there. I think us being silent on this would be a leadership mistake.
Right, missed opportunity. Yeah,
missed opportunity and mistake. Not saying something is saying something, and so
Okay, I went to a couple more comments, and we have to move on. It's 8 o'clock. Christy, did you have something before I go to?
No, I was just going to say that I would only support a comment as long as we're saying that we support the FinCom. I think they did their due diligence and they asked the questions, and if they didn't receive the answers, then I think they made the right decision. And I think that we're looking for the answers to those questions. And so what we're asking is that somehow those questions get answered, whether that's through a community group, through Act Now, or through a town work group. I think that we all are looking for the answers of what's the impact of short-term rentals.
Okay, Rick, go to Rick and then Brooke, and then we're going to cut it off at that point. All right, Rick's gone. There's Brooke.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I sent the following language to Libby. The select board supports the finance committee motion and also supports a thorough review of the impact of short-term rentals on the community to include a broad cross-section of stakeholders led by a work group that is tasked with recommending a regulatory framework to be presented to town meeting.
I like it, but I just have a question on the work group part. Does that signify, Libby, to you that that's a town work group? Or does that mean, is that going to be put on us? We may or may not want to lead it, or might want to be a part of it. I just don't know.
It doesn't sound clear as to who would put it together. And maybe, as Matt earlier said, we don't need to get hung up right now on who puts
it. Okay. All right. Well, I like what Brooke just said. Matt, Christy, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Christy, you okay? All right. We go to Rick, and then we'll go to Rick, and then we'll finish this up.
Jason, thank you. No, I think Brooke's motion was an excellent one. I think it's important for the board to take a leadership role by supporting her motion and accepting a responsibility to set up the work group process. It's really that simple, Jason. Doesn't mean you all have to be personally involved, but you have to accept the responsibility to set the framework for a discussion for community involvement. And I think Brooke's motion does just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I said I was going to end it there, but I did see Henry Sanford's hand come up. Henry, if you did want to say something, I can sneak you in there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to be here as a citizen who's been, very involved with this and involved with research. And, I guess I just want to make it known that a lot of questions have still gone unanswered for us. And I think the FinCom, quite honestly, was appropriate. And I was there at the meeting and I didn't hear answers, objective answers. So I just think I agree that a discussion needs to happen. There are smart ways to improve our quality of life. As someone who's involved in the industry, we all want to see unimpactful short-term rentals. It's very important. That is good business. In bad experiences and bad things that happen as a result of those is not anything that anyone wants in this business. And I just appreciate a further discussion. And I just think that we need to get deeper on how this affects our middle class here on Nantucket. As Tobias says, we need to, if we're, we don't want to cut too deep and not realize that what we're doing before we do it. So I appreciate a further discussion and thank you guys for discussing this so much tonight.
Thank you, Henry. Okay, Matt.
Yeah, Henry, can we lock you and Tobias in a room and have this solved by town meeting? That's a joke, but I'm glad to hear that that you're willing.
Christy?
Thank you. I read Brooke just emailed the motion, and I think just cutting it off at the select board supports the finance committee motion and also supports a thorough review of the impact of short-term rentals on the community. I think that's short and to the point. And if town meeting on the floor wants to, make the recommendation that we have a work group, and I think, as I've said before, after town meeting, we can talk about it at a policy level. But to put all of this into the motion or our comment, I think we're just kind of circling around and around trying to get the wording perfect. And I think we just need to leave it at, we want to know the impact of short-term rentals on our community.
Okay. I agree with you there, Christy. Do you want to make that motion to see where we stand?
I'll make that motion.
Right.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Matt. All those in favor, by roll call, Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. It's 3-0.
I get a tiny clarification. So Christy, you're saying end it at to include a broad cross section of stakeholders?
No, I just ended it at community.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good discussion. Dawn, back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have 91, bylaw safety of drinking water. 92, home rule petition, real estate exchange of Nantucket Island's land bank, Novadeer playing fields for the town of Nantucket's Mill Hill Park. 93, home rule petition amending the town charter relative to the audit committee. 94, home rule petition, town charter, select board amendment, airport capital projects. 95, home rule petition, issuance of pension obligation bonds and notes. 96, charter change, mailing of town meeting warrants. 97, home rule petition, allocate portion of land bank real estate transfer fee to support year-round housing. 98, real estate long-term lease authorization. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, can I go back to 97?
Yep.
I would like to concur with the FinCom. I think we want to give clear direction, again, like on the housing articles.
Do you want to say that we agree with the FinCom and that we strongly urge support for, what is it, 8, 10, and 24?
That would be great.
Is that a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Is that a second? All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fay,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Okay, 98, real estate long-term lease authorization airport. 99, real estate acquisition 114 Orange. 100, real estate conveyance 114 Orange. 101, real estate acquisition 64 North Liberty. 102, real estate acquisition Morgan Square. 103, real estate conveyance Morgan Square. 104, real estate acquisition Hancock Street. 105, real estate conveyance Hancock Street. 106, real estate acquisition way off of Quail Lane. 107, real estate conveyance way off of Quail Lane. 108, real estate acquisition way off of Hawthorne Way. 109, real estate conveyance way off of Hawthorne Lane. I'm thinking those are both meant to be Hawthorne Lane. Is that a typo? Maybe check that.
Are you reading off of the table of contents?
Yes.
I'll double check it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it's just,
They should both be Hawthorne Lane. Just
the articles say something different, Erica. Should it be lane or way?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to check.
okay. 110, adopt Indigenous Peoples Day locally in place of Columbus Day. 111, appropriation stabilization fund. 112, appropriation free cash. Okay.
Just
Matt?
one comment, I'm sure, I've been thinking about doing this, at having town meeting and how difficult is going to be with changes. Maybe you've discussed this with the moderator, but how difficult it's going to be with changes. And I think one thing we could do and I would like to take credit for this, but someone else had the idea today. They said, why not have people bring it in writing and a bunch of copies to hand out? Because I think it's going to be really hard to follow some of these articles at town meeting. So we don't have to decide it tonight, but maybe maybe we give people direction to come with a bunch of copies so that we can get through this, or it could be,
You're talking about amendments.
Any amendments or changes. We're going to, if it's just a minor amendment, who cares? But if it's a major thing, then people should be bringing it in writing so that everyone else can read it. We're going to miss Alan Mary and not having the screen up.
I don't want to speak for the town moderator, but my understanding is that she's going to put the word out to ask for everything to come to her in writing. And it probably does make sense for people to print out copies or have it available somewhere.
We did have a town meeting check-in with staff and the moderator this morning, and you're going to get an update about it at your meeting on the 28th. But we do need to continue getting the word out that there will be no screen and it will be back to basics. So let us all lower our expectations for that. And we're working on a process for amendments that we're going to put in the paper and have a bunch of outreach on. And so more later, but point well taken. Thank you.
Well, I
And
can't.
we are going to
That
have
was Tom Barretta came up with that one. That wasn't me.
And we are going to have to streamline things as much as we possibly can to get through this number of articles, dealing with, we have no idea whether it's going to be hot or cold or windy or We do have a rain date, but we also don't have any lighting set up. So if we go all day Saturday and have to go to Monday at 5, we can really only stay in session until it gets dark. But maybe there will be a solution to additional lighting if needed. But hopefully we can just stay on track and have a successful town meeting outside. Are there any committee reports? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Melissa. Jason, was that a second? Or Matt? Sorry. All those in favor by roll call. Matt Fay.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Thank you all very much. We'll
everyone.
see you
Bye.
our regular meeting in 2 weeks.